What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast, where you didn't really ask for, but hey, we're going to give it to you anyways. This is a podcast where we talk about anything, everything, well, anything about movies. I'm one of your co-hosts, Chase Lee, and hey guys, listen, if you were searching on the internet for another top 10 list and you accidentally came across this one, well, you're in luck because this is the best one. But anyways, welcome if you are a new listener. If you're a returning listener, we always love having you back. What we typically do on this show is we'll go over some movie news or trailers, and we'll talk about the movies that come out on the weekend, and of course, the box office results to accompany that. But this week is special. It's the end of the year, Joel. We are doing our top 10 films of 2017. That is right, folks. Episode 211. We are here. It is the end of the year. And speaking of Joel, my beautiful co-host, he is right here sitting next to me, by the way. This is our first time that we are recording in the same room. So keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. So, Joel, how are we doing this week?
I'm doing pretty well. It's a weird aura being in the actual room of recording. This is exciting. I've never done this before since I started in April. And I'm excited to be on the scene, if you will.
I don't know what that means. It sounds like a snowman reference, but we're going to go ahead and bypass that. So thank you. All right, so so Joel is here. But guys, listen, we're not alone. So basically, Joel has the connections on the Twitter sphere. I do not. I just post up stupid statuses or tweets or whatever you want to call them. And, if I get a like, I, don't cry at night. That's how my Twitter activity is. But Joel, on the other hand, he talks to a lot of people. He talks to a lot of critics that are not in Texas. And so Joel actually, he threw out the fishing line, and he hooked us a prestigious critic, because I've read his reviews. I'm a huge fan, as Joel has turned me on to him. And, of course, Joel is a huge fan. Joel, would you like to introduce our guest?
Yeah. So our guest today is Mark Dujsik. He is the owner, manager, and as I put it on Twitter, everythinger of Mark Reviews Movies. And he's also a contributor to RogerEbert.com and also McGill's Cinema Annual, which is that giant book that costs like $300 every summer. And really, really thrilled to have him on. We recorded a podcast once upon a time back talking about the best films of 2014, and we've tried to make it happen a couple times since then. But now that I have an official outlet to be able to do this, it's kind of nice that we're able to have him on, and I don't have to like duck around any stupid podcast. Like rip-off things. We actually have Spreaker and all of that, and it's really nice to have him back. I've known him for about 10 years next month. I sent him an email way back, and now here we are. So, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Would you like to specify what that email was?
Yeah, so it was about... it's funny. So... I sent him
Not too much detail. Maybe just the movie. That should be enough.
Yeah, pretty much. It was Across the Universe. I sent him an email complaining about his very negative review of Across the Universe, which I loved when I saw it back in 2007, and I don't remember anything about it anymore. So that, I guess, says more about the me than the movie, I guess. But
time has proven me correct, so there we go.
Yeah, pretty much. So, so where are you at online right now? In terms of your plug your stuff, Twitter.
Okay, so like you said, writer, editor, publisher, MarkReviewsMovies.com, contributor for RogerEbert.com. Let's see, I started up doing some reviewing for Newsy, which is both an online outlet, but I'm doing stuff for their, I think it's called The Weekend Beat, which is like their cable channel weekly entertainment show. So I'm on there every so often. That's about it. And then McGill's, which is good. That gives me a little bit of time to like do some longer reviews.
Yeah, this guy.
Yeah, even longer than
wrote. Like I just 900 review of Legends of Oz. Back
that was rough. But I did a like 1,400 word review of Justice League for the book this year.
Are there 1,400 words to say about that movie?
Apparently there are. I was surprised where they came from. I don't know where they came from, but it was that was fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
So yeah, I'm keeping busy.
Well, Mark, I am a huge fan as someone that looks up to you guys and Joel and pretty much all the Dallas critics. I can't believe that someone like myself that's on YouTube and on the internet just complaining about movies. I have hung out with the greats, and I can say that is a good thing. So yeah, so like I said, what we usually do is we do news and trailers and stuff. But Joel and I were like, you know what? We're going to cut to the chase this week. No trailers or news. We're going to go straight into the top 10 films of 2017. But first, Joel has insisted that we do some honorable mentions, just briefly kind of touch upon them, because as Joel put it the other day, this has been an incredible year for film. So I actually want to throw over to Mark first. Mark, what are some of the films that just barely almost made it but just couldn't?
There were so many that like my 9 and 10 spot were just painful this year because there was so much. I'm like, I really would love to put that in there, but no, I can't. And oh wait,
yeah, it's like giving away your children. You're just like, listen, I've already got 10 children. I can't give away these 2. I have to keep them, and then you ultimately have to. I
would have been fine doing like a top 15, except that would have just been even more painful, probably. But yeah, so I was even just picking out 5 that I wanted to just highlight was tough. So I'm like looking at my honorable mentions. I'm like, oh, I would love to throw that in there. I'd love to throw that in there. So I'm just kind of like randomly picking 5 that I thought like this is stuff I want to highlight, either just because maybe people haven't seen it or because it's a nice counterbalance to the other stuff that's on the list. I don't know. So my first one is Logan, which is one of the best superhero movies in a long time. It actually treats that character, Wolverine, now Logan, because all of his X-Men days are past, with respect, and it tells a really good story. And I've seen it like 3 times, and it actually makes me kind of emotional, and I was very surprised by that. So Logan is the first one I want to highlight. Next one is The Lovers with Tracy Letts and Deborah Winger. It feels like a golden age screwball comedy from like the 30s or the 40s, except obviously with a little bit more sex and some swearing in it. But it's about 2 people who have been married for a long time. They're both having extramarital affairs, and then they end up kind of hooking up with each other because of that, because it's really funny. Tracy Letts gives one of the best performances of the year, easily. I think probably the best comedic performance of the year in it. So check that one out. I think that's on Amazon Prime now. Next one is Personal Shopper. Oliver Assayas's and Kristen Stewart's next team up. It's a ghost story, but it's also a murder mystery, and it's also this thriller about text messaging, which none of that seems to go together, but it works really well in this. And it's all about trying to overcome grief and not being able to, even when you have the answers right in front of you. It's really a great mystery. Let's see. The Shape of Water, Guillermo del Toro, not Benicio del Toro, Rex Reed, Guillermo del Toro's great homage to 1950s creature features, with Sally Hawkins playing a woman who's mute, and she is working at this government facility with a bunch of weird stuff going on. She meets a guy, a fish man, who ends up kind of falling for him because they kind of connect on that level. It's a lovely little movie, and really, actually, it's not little, it's big. There's a lot going on in it. I have a feeling we're going to be talking about it later on, so I don't want to go into too much detail on it. And then my 5th choice is Trophy, which is a documentary I think probably nobody has even heard of. A few people have heard of it. I know I got Joel to watch it, so I'm happy about that. But it's about trophy hunting in Africa, but it's also about how the reintegration of this wildlife into a civilization that was kind of used to not having them around just because of history of colonization and all this other stuff, have to readjust to having like lions roaming around their villages and that they didn't have before. It's really complex in terms, it's not just a screed against trophy hunting. There's a lot going on. It's a lot more complicated than I think people keep in mind. And this one goes really deep into all the issues that arise with that. So I'm not sure where people can find it. I think it might have been on CNN at some point, but look for it. It's called Trophy. And those are my five.
Yeah, when you because we set up a little group chat, and so we kind of knew our honorable mentions going in. And you definitely have an interesting group, and of course, I gotta disagree with you on the lovers. I was telling Joel like when I watched that one, I didn't really care for it. I just thought like just everyone sleeping around with each other, just no one was really likable. I didn't really want to follow anyone. But no, I Logan's great. Shape of Water, which is another one I will throw at. It's not in my honorable mentions, but it's not in my top 10, but I will say that I agree with you. It's a really great adult fairy tale from Del Toro, not Benicio, and it really just kind of captures the imagination. It has humor, heart, horror, violence, everything. It's pretty much every genre like melded into one from Del Toro's creative mind, and it's absolutely genius. But I'm going to go ahead and flip it over to Joel now. Joel, what are the five that just couldn't make it and just couldn't touch that 10 spot? You just had to kick out because you hate your children.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting this year because this was unintentional. I'm just going to say that. It just kind of became a themed list because one of these movies was literally number 10 until last week. And so when it fell out, it joined four others, and that made it into a list of the movies that I had the most fun with in 2017. I think we can all agree that we needed to have fun this year.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been... to put on my sarcasm hat, it's been completely uneventful, entirely non-dramatic. No, it's been a year. A slightly tainted first movie that I'm going to mention because a co-star from this movie is one of the reasons that it wasn't a great year. But Baby Driver was literally my number 10, and I just think that this movie is so inventive, so funny. Just the opening really. Kind of it redefines the car chase. The plot isn't exactly the most innovative thing in the world. It kind of reminds of Drive a lot, I found, but it still takes it in some directions that are really fun, and it's a great cast. Best soundtrack in years, probably since like either The Girl Next Door or Almost Famous. It's up there in terms of soundtracks. And then the next one was Free Fire, which I thought was a really fun experiment in like putting a lot of disparate personalities together into a warehouse for one night of a gun sale gone awry. Great cast. I love that the photography kind of weaves in and out of the warehouse as people are shooting each other. I think I know Mark, you're a little less of a fan, but you put it really well that it's a violent game of tag, which I think is apt in it, and I got along with it better than you did. But
well, and I have to back up Joel. Like I still remember the screening that we went to. It was definitely probably the top 5 most fun screenings we went to all year. It was absolutely such a blast to watch.
A24, man, they have 3 movies in my top 10, and that's right outside. So. And then also Logan Lucky, which I thought was retired filmmaker Steven Soderbergh's really, really fun movie about a couple of brothers who one of them is fired because of an insurance liability, so they want to steal money from race car kind of involved tracks. There we go, and. Yeah, I thought it was really, really funny and fun. Introducing Daniel Craig as Joe Bang was, oh my gosh. And so I just really like that. Also Okja, which is Bong Joon-ho's sort of like fight back corporate culture, but it's also a really sweet tale of a girl and her pet friend, this giant pig that's going to become food if she doesn't save it, and just becomes this really fun chase movie. Is a lot of nice showboaty stuff that Bong is able to incorporate into the movie, and it was just a lot of fun. And then the final one is, for me at least, the best Marvel movie of the year, which was Spider-Man: Homecoming, probably the best Marvel movie ever. And I kind of I don't know, it's certainly up there, and I just think it's a lot of fun. It kind of set itself apart from the adventures that Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy had this year. I thought by just kind of being on the ground floor, it gives you a villain who's a little more understandable and conceivable than most Marvel villains are. And so anyway, those 5 movies were the ones that I really had the most fun with. It unfortunately meant that I don't really have a movie on my list that is traditionally fun. I sometimes like to have that, but it's just been a great year, and those could easily be my number 10.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with your honorable mentions. I will say, one of my favorite triple features I did this year involved Logan Lucky. So get this. One of the best kind of grouping of movies I saw. So I saw Mother, I saw the original Psycho, and Logan Lucky in the same day. Now, if that doesn't mess with your mind and send you into an insane asylum and have you take crazy pills, then I have no idea what does. But yeah, no, that's a pretty good list. I'm going to make a lot of people angry with some of the stuff I'm about to say. First off, for my honorable mentions, I know Joel's going to get super angry when I say The Post. Now listen, I had The Post at my number 10 or number 9, right? And so, like we just said, it was hard to eliminate some of these movies, and it just so happened that I saw 2 movies literally a week ago that were bumped up in there, and I had to kick 2 of them off, and that was one of them. But I thought that was, a really well done movie from Steven Spielberg. It was swift, it was energetic, the dialogue was sharp, the acting was on point. You and I both agree that the supporting acting is way better than the main acting. All supporting characters are amazing, including Bob Odenkirk. So that would be the first one. Like I said, we walked out of the screening. I loved it, but like I said, it was so hard to eliminate movies that you kind of had to.
It's one, actually, this is fun because we don't know our 10s, and it's one that I had to eliminate as well. So.
Oh, man. Well, you know what, folks? It just so happens that we had to kill our child called The Post. All right, so that one is for that one. The next one is The Big Sick. Absolutely love this one. I think it's a delightful romantic comedy. I saw this a week after my breakup in July. Joel knows about that, and that cheered me up twofold. I absolutely love the performances from what's her name? Zoe Kazan, and of course Kumail Nanjiani. Oh, look at that! I almost got it right. I'm a white person. So, anyways, no, I really enjoyed it. I thought the writing was really well done. I love the interaction between Kumail and her parents. With Ray Romano and Holly Hunter, who I think should get some type of award of recognition. It's just a sweet movie. It's funny. It hits you where it hurts. With the romance and the comedy, it's just an all-around great movie. The next one, I got Mark's back on this one because Joel and I have been fighting on this one since August, and I have no idea what crawled up his butt and died. So it's Detroit, and it's a fantastic film. Now, I will agree, because Joel and I did an episode on this, and I still stand by it, this film should have been 50-50. It should have been 50% at the motel and 50% in the courtroom. The problem with the movie was, it was like 80% motel and like 20% courtroom, and it just kind of whizzed by. However, you can't neglect the fact that this movie is a really well acted, brutal look into this time period, and it is well shot, well acted, and well directed. And you can fight me on that, Joel, because I would love to hear your rebuttal when I get done with this real fast. And then I'm going to shut you up because you're wrong. So anyways, Detroit is definitely a one that is getting extremely underlooked this award season. I remember walking out of that movie and I was just like, man, Will Poulter would have made a great Pennywise. My number 4, I'm going to go with this little documentary that I saw at the Dallas Film Festival, which it's probably my most viewed review that I saw at the festival. I think it's around like 4,500 views right now on YouTube, and every single comment is about someone with chronic fatigue syndrome, and this documentary is Unrest. I felt the same way I felt when I saw Gleason. Mark, was it a couple years ago or last year?
That was last year, I think.
Last year. Okay, so
I'm pretty sure that was last year.
Yeah, Gleason was a really great one about someone just kind of overcoming a medical condition, and Unrest is the same thing. I had no idea what chronic fatigue syndrome is. It is such a mystery, but it's one of those things that no one really knows what to do, and it's just something that kind of people get it, and doctors don't know what to do, and it was just such a compelling documentary to watch, and it affects those type of documentaries. I'm not going to lie, there is a little bit of bias there because they kind of affect me differently because I do have a long-term illness. You guys know that I have Crohn's, so I've had that for almost a decade, and it affects my day-to-day activities, and this is exactly what CFS does to these people. And I felt for them. I just thought it was a really just kind of emotionally impactful documentary that you guys should definitely check out. I recommend it. And the last one, I actually think that if I had to, it's not my top 10, obviously, because I'm about to tell you guys, but I will tell you, if I had to pick the best directed movies of the year, this is definitely in there, Dunkirk. This thing is an experience like no other. The first time I saw it was in IMAX, and it just blew me out of the water. And so when I saw it again in just a regular theater, it was still just as powerful. The way that film is directed with the battle sequences and the way it's put together, and the fact that it's non-linear, and the fact that we have this subtle acting that doesn't like overpower anything. It's just the right amount of spice inside this jambalaya of a great movie. And it's some of the best dogfighting I've seen ever in a war film. I don't know how they did that. It's impressive. Christopher Nolan, I don't care what anyone says about you. You are a masterful director. Some of your films might be a miss for some people, but there's no denying your talent, sir. So before we get into the top 10 and have Mark go, Joel, would you like to reiterate why Detroit just like tickles you in the wrong way and why you are just wrong about everything?
I'm actually thinking we could hold off on that.
Oh!
I think we
did you see that, folks? Mark just threw me a curveball, and that was a great segue.
Because I think we might be able to talk about it a little bit later. I don't know. I'm just saying.
I think that was basically just a nudge telling me to shut up and let's get this going. So,
no, that wasn't a nudge. It was just a thought.
Mark, I'm messing with you.
We're going to get into it.
Exactly. So when we get into it, we can have Joel rebuttal, and then I'm just going to sit with my arms crossed, and you can talk down to him. All right, so Mark, let's do it, sir. Number 10, what are you doing? What is that one film that snuck in there and beat out those 5 you just listed?
And a couple other ones that I didn't mention.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's rough. My number 10 is Mudbound, which is Dee Reese's epic story of life on a Mississippi farm in the pre World War II era, during World War II, and post World War II era. It's so huge, and there are so many characters. I think there are about 5 main characters who have like specific importance to this story. Maybe even more than that. I don't even know. There are so many, but what's so impressive about it, when I was watching the film, I didn't know that it was based on a novel, but when I was watching it, I kept thinking to myself, this plays out exactly like a novel. And sure enough, when the credits started rolling, I was waiting around to see if it was, and sure enough, it was. But there's so much about the internal lives of these characters. And Reese does that through a bunch of voiceover narration, but it never feels like it's too much or it's out of place or anything. It just brings you into the lives of these characters and what they're feeling and how they're reacting to all these different social pressures. So basically, the story is Jason Clarke plays a man who buys a farm in Mississippi with his new wife, who's played by Carey Mulligan. It's a sharecropping farm, and there's a family of sharecroppers on there. They're played by Rob Morgan and Mary J. Blige, along with their kids. And I can't. It's hard to get into detail about it because there's just so much happening. But it's basically about the way that those two families, how they respond to the way things are going within the culture and within society at that time. Obviously, racism is a big deal, and the film tackles that really, really brilliantly through this friendship between the eldest son of the sharecroppers, who's played by Jason Mitchell, and Jason Clarke's character's younger brother, played by Garrett Hedlund. They're both World War II veterans, and they kind of strike up a friendship over their experiences in the war. It's so rich that I could not put this on my list. And the one thing I kind of, and I'm a little bit disappointed about it, is that it's a Netflix film, but it did play in theaters, and I'm still trying to figure out in terms of like reviewing how I'm going to cover Netflix. So right now I'm watching them and kind of just putting them on my website with a rating, and that's about it. But if it's in the theaters, I will go out and see it. or I'll watch it on a screener or something, and I'll actually review it. And I'm really glad this was one of them. But I kind of wish Netflix would rethink their strategy just a little bit, maybe, because I don't know how long they're going to be able to keep this up of just doing these original films or buying them from festivals and just putting them on their platform and not getting to a bigger audience in theaters. Or maybe the platform is big enough. I don't know. It's a really tough spot right now that they're in because, I don't know how many people are really going to consider this either a film or television when it's just on Netflix. I don't know. So, but yeah, Mudbound is my number 10.
Unfortunately, I did not see that one. But what's ironic about you mentioning Mudbound, I'm not even lying when I say this. I went to work yesterday, and one of my coworkers came in, and he asked me, like, have you seen Mudbound? I was like, no, but I've heard about it. And, it was that Netflix film that I missed because I watched Oakjaw, I watched Gerald's Game, I watched a couple other Netflix movies, but that was just one that kind of slipped by. But the fact that you're putting it on your list makes me want to watch it even more. So I'm actually really excited about it. Joel, did you see Mudbound? What did you think about it? And go ahead and dive into your number 10.
Yeah, I did see Mudbound. It's not on my list. I will say that Garrett Hedlund's performance is one of my nominees for best supporting actor. He's a revelation in that movie. I don't think he's ever been that good, at least to my knowledge. I haven't seen him with that much, just like giving a performance that good. And I'll tell you, like this year was so good that I have a top 10, and then I have the 5 honorable mentions, and then I also have 10 honorable mentions outside of that that could have been a list, and it's not even on that list. So it's one that registers pretty highly for me. It's just been such a good year, and it's a powerful piece of work for sure. Mark's right. There's a lot going on in this movie that it very much feels like a novel.
Yeah, I'm really glad I didn't get into too much detail since you haven't seen it yet, Chase. Because watch that tonight if you have a chance.
Well, I mean, if there's any consolation to what you just said, the coworker that told me about it, no lie, he just had a baby a month ago. He is tired as hell. He said he went home. He was about to fall asleep. He started Mudbound. And he was so unraveled into the story that he stayed up to watch it. So if that's any indication on how good it is, I will definitely give it a shot.
It's pretty hypnotic. So my number 10 is one that Mark just mentioned as one of his honorable mentions, and this is the best documentary I saw this year, and it's one that he did turn me on to. It's called Trophy, and I'm not really going to say anything much more than what he said, but I will say like the points of sympathy and the different avenues of stories and the tellings of the stories in this documentary is just amazing. It really, that final emotional beat is really hit very hard. I think Mark knows what I'm talking about. There's this wail of emotion, like just, I don't even know if it's crying or what, but it ends the movie and we don't expect the person that it comes from, and we don't expect to feel for that person. So much. And it's really powerful work. It's from director Charles Schwartz. I feel like this movie really should have been considered more strongly by critics this season. It feels like it hasn't showed up at all, and I just have to wonder, like Mark was saying, nobody seems to have seen it, and does that include the critics? It just kind of disappeared. It came out, I think, in September, right? And then it just died. Just nobody really reviewed it. And it fell by the wayside. I don't know. I mean, there might be too many movies coming out. Yeah,
I hate to say it, but there might be too many movies coming out.
Mark reviews like 27 movies a week at this point, and so it's
not
very true. It's about
There's a lot, but
it's a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's details that we learn here that are just amazing, like that rhino horn is worth, I think it's more than heroin and gold combined or something, or it's like more than both of them. I don't know if it was combined, but it's certainly that it's like worth more than both of them. And we see that guy who uses the Bible to justify his hunting, and I think you put it really well in your review. It sounded like a serial killer trying to.
It does. It really does.
It really does. It's creepy. Yeah. Beyond terrifying, man. I mean, it sounds exactly like a cult leader kind of using that. Yeah, it's terrifying, but it's a
there's
really
also that
illuminating documentary, and anybody who loves documentaries and hasn't seen this, it's on iTunes now.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's $6.99. It might be lower than that. I'm not sure, but I didn't look at the price. But it is on iTunes, and you should rent or buy it, and check that out.
Well, thank you for recommending a movie I haven't seen. So now that you both have recommended it, I will seek out and watch this movie because I love documentaries. I love just seeking them out throughout the year. Most of the time, when we have the Dallas International Film Festival here, it's primarily documentaries, which is not a bad thing. Like if you have a good documentary from me, I will appreciate that more than most blockbusters. So the fact that you two are both praising it, I am all down for it. Now, before I get into my number 10, I must reiterate this because people are going to jump on me because of certain choices that are not on here. Okay, so Mark does this for a living. I do not. I have literally seen a little over a third of what he has seen. Joel has seen more than me. I have not seen that much. I think I capped out at like 133. That's like a drop in the bucket for Mark. And then for Joel, that he just snickers at that. So just keep in mind, folks, like these two gentlemen watch way more than me. But the 10 I have, like I said, I watched as much as I could. And, I did the best I can.
I trust you. Don't worry about it.
I trust. Thank you. So my number 10, I remember seeing this in theaters, and I'm going to count this as a 2017 release because that's when it released here in the United States. I saw it in April. I saw it at 10 a.m., by the way. There were 8 people in the theater. Usually when I go see these movies in theaters, or it's like a foreign film or like a obscure film, sometimes there's not that many people in the audience. I was actually surprised that there was a large turnout. So when I watched the movie, I was kind of blown away, not only by the animation style, but just the rich story with these two characters that we could all just kind of like see ourselves in them. I'm going to go with Your Name. This little animated film that just came in April. I think it was there for a couple weeks and just kind of left like the wind. And I loved everything from start to finish. I thought it was just a really well-rounded movie. It starts out, it's animated in style of like anime, just to give you guys like kind of a picture. But the story is about these two high schoolers, one of which is a girl, other a guy, and they can find out that they basically can Freaky Friday themselves and switch each other's conscience into each other's bodies. And so they have no idea what's going on. So this guy becomes this girl becomes this guy. And as the movie progresses, it becomes this really interesting kind of time travel, almost type of wormhole type movie. I don't know. The way it starts out like, a Freaky Friday movie would, where it's like a comedy, where it's like, the guy's like, oh, I got boobs and stuff, and like he literally says it. He looks down, and he's like, oh, boobs, and it's like, cool. I'm watching Beavis and Butthead anime version. So, when the movie starts out, it's very playful, very witty, and has a lot of humor. But as it kind of progresses, and these two kids don't know what's happening, and they have to figure out what is going on and why did the universe pick them to channel each other. It just became this really like thematically rich movie, and I became more invested into it. So not only is the animation crisp, it's beautiful, it's got that awesome rustic hand-drawn animation. It looks like it takes like 100 hours per scene. I love that type of animation style. It was like a good mix of hand-drawn and 3D animation. The story was really well done. Started out humorous, but then ended up becoming this really, really great drama, almost like sci-fi drama romance. Like it was an interesting mix, but it was one of those anime movies that kind of came out of nowhere, caught me off guard, and I just love absolutely every single second of it. And I know a lot of people are not going to have this on the list. That's fine. But I saw this back in April, and it has still held up. So, Mark, just real quick, did you ever see Your Name?
I did.
Did you like it?
I did. Yeah. I'm quite surprised and happy it's on your list. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. It's and yeah, you're right. It starts off as a comedy, and it gets richer and deeper as it goes, and you really do not expect where it's going to go based on how it starts off.
Oh yeah, towards the end, you're just like, really? They went that direction? I'm okay with it.
Yeah. There are parts of it that are a little bit too sappy for me, but I mean that's me. But I know a few people who really really like Your Name. So that is a very good recommendation and a good spot on that list, I think. So good
Yeah,
job. Yeah. Yeah,
hey,
you see,
listen,
you had me worried with your little disclaimer at the beginning. I'm like, no, that's a good solid choice that I was not expecting. So
I
yeah.
can't wait to throw another one at you, Mark. Like, you're gonna be like, really, that one? Like, trust me, there's gonna be such an obscure
There's
one
gonna
on
be
here
something.
that people are gonna be like, that was a movie that came out. So I'll get to that in just a second. But Joel, I know we've talked about Your Name a lot. I remember we actually saw it around the same weekend, right? And you raved about it as well.
I think we actually saw it like at the same time.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Different theaters, but you happened to like send me a text about 20 minutes after I got out of the movie, and I was like, "Oh, hey, I just saw this as well." It's really good. It's in there in that list, the top 10 honorable mentions or whatever that I have outside of all this. It's a special thing. I really like it. Like Mark, I think that there are a couple of sappy parts. There's also a couple of instances of them sort of imparting information, expository information, very quickly through montage, and it just kind of is a little too much, I thought. But other than that, and it was important information, like crucial. So other than that, it's a really good movie, and I'm glad that I saw it. Okay, so Mark, what is your number 9?
My number 9, you're going to yell at me.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I know you will. You're going to be. I already know what you're going to say. My number 9 is Lady Bird.
Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mark, just real quick before we begin, usually on our list shows, if Joel and I have a movie in the same spot, I will announce it, or he will announce it. Guess what, Mark? We got Lady Bird in the same spot.
Look at this.
We both have made Joel angry. Call 911, folks. He is having a heart attack. So, Mark, I'll let you go first, and I'll just kind of piggyback off of you. And then, if Joel has come back from his coma,
Domestic event. Okay.
he will rebuttal. So, Mark, I'm assuming that, like, because I read your review on it, and like you and I both love this movie. But once again, this year was so competitive. Like it seems like you and I are on the same kind of wavelength where it's like there's a lot more greatness out there, and we just had to peg this down a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. Like, I had this on my list like right after I saw it, and this is one of those like I kept trying to fight like to keep it in there, and this is where it kind of ended up because I really enjoy it. It's Greta Gerwig's first film directing on her own, because she did co-direct a film a while ago. I mean, who cares? That's irrelevant in the big picture of things. But it has to be semi-autobiographical about a character who calls herself Lady Bird. I believe what's her real name?
Christine.
You would know right away.
I live this movie. Okay.
And so Christine / Lady Bird is played by Saoirse Ronan in a really great performance. And it's just all about her senior year of high school and trying to adjust to the idea of being kind of this outsider and also trying to fit in a little bit more, just because, you know, she's like 17 years old, and it's about that time where you kind of want to have some friends and stuff other than the, you know, one friend you've been friends with since like you were 10 years old or something. And it's all about her trying to fit in with people. She ends up with a couple of boyfriends along the way, and those obviously turn uncomfortable. But and then primarily it's about her relationship with her mother, played by Laurie Metcalf, and her father, just out of the blue, is also played by Tracy Letts, who says the word Doritos in this in a way that I really want to make my ringtone. Tracy Letts is so great. He's in so much this year, and he's so great in different ways in all the movies that he's in. But yeah, when he said Doritos, I just was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. There's a lot of little details like that. It seems like just the way that the father says Doritos is not that big a deal, but it's a huge deal. And the father also has this speech about why toothpaste is useless. And there are all these details. Lady Bird writing the names of all of her crushes on her bedroom wall and crossing them off as they go away from her life. I don't even know. There's so much that's so caring about these characters. There are 2 scenes, I believe, involving like a priest at the school, because it's an all-girls Catholic school. And there's there's a scene with the priest out of the blue for no apparent reason, except that obviously this character, in whatever form this character was in Gerwig's real life, or just putting this character down to paper, meant something to her in some way. And so she wanted to give him this really good scene to kind of reveal what's going on in his life at that time. He's not an important character, but that scene is so great, and it also reveals something about her mother too, because you see her mother being really domineering and just, yeah, it's rough. So you want to see that side of the mother too. I just really, I was laughing a lot because of all these details about the characters and the life in high school, and that seems to be the entire point of the movie, is just that there's a nun near the end of the film who says that, you know, attention and love are basically the same thing, and you can tell that Gerwig loves these characters, whoever they're based on, if they're based on anybody. It's, you know, that's all up in the air. And, you know, the city of Sacramento where it's set, it's a special film. I really did enjoy it.
Yeah, it's one of those films to where Joel, the unfortunate person he is, saw it 2 months before I did, and so this kid would do nothing but talk about it every single day. I'll be like, "Hey, Joel, for this week we're doing Thor Ragnarok." Lady Bird. I saw Lady Bird. It's like, cool, Joel. I know you saw Lady Bird. Can we please move on? So, anyways, when I finally got to it, there was so much anticipation built up, and so I watched it, absolutely loved it, and I know my girlfriend has told me not to put her out in the spotlight, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways. I gave it to her to watch, and she loved it too. So, like, this film has been universally loved by everyone. I have yet to meet one person, besides that one guy that trolled on Rotten Tomatoes, one person in real life that said they hated it, or at least, you know, disliked it. Like, it's such a pleasant film about growing up. We've all been there. Guys, girls, you can all watch this. Like, we can all relate to this. First loves, you know, like you said, Mark, friendships that go back to elementary school. When you get to high school, that starts to shift a little bit. I've been in that scenario before. You know, like I said, first loves, going to college. But what this film did different than any other coming-of-age film, I'm not going to really spoil it or say where it ends, but I will say this. Most coming-of-age films will end at a certain point where you figure, like, oh, like, hey, everything's happy, they're going off to college, yay. It's like, what this film does is it does that, but then it goes on for another 5 minutes or so, and it actually shows you these, it almost like brings the main character down to reality a little bit, and that's actually where it kind of hooked me into thinking this movie's really good. Is like, I loved it all the way up until a certain point at the end, and then once I kind of carried on a little bit, I was like, oh wow, they're actually extending this a little bit and really showing, you know, this main character how the real world is. And it was almost like getting hit in the face with a brick, like that. But that's how it usually is when you're in high school and you transition to college. Like, you live in your own little bubble, and when you actually have that bubble burst a little bit and you go off into the real world, it's scary, and it's such a different, you know, landscape. Just like what Lady Bird says in the movie, she's like, you know, that's where the culture is at. It's on the East Coast, but then when you finally get there, you realize it's kind of nothing. You kind of miss your home a little bit, and so that we can all kind of, you know, get to that point where we can relate. But also, you know, with Greg Gerwig's direction, you know, she captures real characters, but she also adds her own distinct style of quirk and, you know, just wittiness with the dialogue. It's humorous. There's subtle, dramatic moments, like you said, Mark. The parents have, you know, their own little personalities, you know, with the dad saying Doritos in a funny way, or, you know, the mom going clothes shopping with her. Everyone's got their own distinct personality, and this is actually one of the few films this year where every single character had an arc. Every single one of them, even like the side character that said like a line in the background, would come to the foreground and be like, "Here is my arc," and I'd be like, that is amazing. So I'm glad that, like, no one was left out. It was a complete film, and it's something that we can all kind of grasp to. And I believe Joel, when he says this after watching it, is that this will be talked about for years to come as a masterful coming-of-age film that everyone will want to watch. Now, Joel has been tapping me on the shoulder because he's got something to say. I'm assuming I did something wrong or I effed up. So, Joel, what would you like to say to us?
Just that it's way too low. I'm just kidding. I'm obviously passing for the most part, but I will say that, you know, Greta Gerwig said something. I think it's actually been a regular line for her whenever when she talks about this movie. and it's the idea that you never really understand home until you leave it, and that's such a potent idea. I've been there before, and it's a hard place to be in, and it's just anyway. I'm just gonna pass, and I'm gonna move on to my number 9.
Okay.
So my number 9 is one that Chase just mentioned as an honorable mention. That's Dunkirk. This movie is a ride. It's so good. It's technically just about perfect. Maybe the mix is a little wonky. Whatever. I don't really care. I actually don't really think so either. I think it's kind of a perfect mix because we're not really supposed to follow the dialogue. It's there. That's there's no real like super important line of dialogue said in those warplanes. It's mostly Kenneth Branagh on the ground. So, anyway, otherwise, just perfect visual effects, practical and CGI. It's a great mixture of the two. There's less CGI, obviously, and but like Chase, I'm wondering how they did most of this stuff. It's a special movie in terms of just like the logistics of this thing is considerable and formidable, and Nolan is one of the greats. I mean, his he's made top 10s. I think 2 of his 3 movies have made top 10s this decade for me, or I guess 3 of his 4 movies, I should say. And I just loved it. All the performances are really great. I mean, they aren't used a whole lot because it's kind of one of those things where all the faces are. They're soldiers. It's about the experience of war. It's not about, the people in the war so much. I know that there's a lot of people who complain about that it makes, the movie kind of hollow or whatever, but I don't think it is. I think it's very meaningful, and I love the action is astounding in this movie. So that's my number 9. It's kind of low, I guess, considering where it is with a lot of other people's lists, but that's where it is on mine. Okay.
It's low enough. I'm going to pass talking about it. Oh, you're going to pass.
Okay. Oh, all right. So, what is your number 8, Mark?
My number 8 is a little zombie film called The Girl with All the Gifts. You want to talk about movies that people just did not see? This is one of them, which is weird because, I guess the zombie craze is kind of passing by, but this is so good, and it's much more than just a zombie film. So from the setup, it's going to sound exactly like your regular old zombie movie. There's a group of characters who have to go around this desolated landscape that used to be civilization, and they have to find out kind of what's causing everything. That sounds normal, except that it's not structured that simply. It starts off with this mysterious girl played by Sania Nanua. I hope I didn't butcher that too much. This is, as far as I know, her first movie role. She's fantastic. It's a really ambiguous role, and she plays it really well. And she's in this military facility, and you have no clue what's going on from the start. There's just a bunch of kids. They all are wheeled out in wheelchairs, bound to them with these face masks like Hannibal Lecter over their faces, and they go through like school. They have their lights out in these cells, and you have no clue what's going on. And eventually, as the film progresses, you learn so much more about the causes of this outbreak, how Nanua's character named Melanie fits into all of this, and you have these other characters played by Gemma Arterton, Glenn Close, and Patty Considine, and they are a teacher, a scientist, and a military man, respectively. And all those characters fit into Melanie's place in this world, and the way that how they understand what she is, what she could be, whether she's a threat, whether she's salvation for, all of them and even more. It's so complicated, and it leads to this conclusion, which I'm not going to give any details about, but it leads to this conclusion that just throws the entire concept of the zombie movie on its head, and it makes complete logical sense. And it's also kind of both terrifying and satisfying at the same time when you really consider the implications of it. Um, it's from a novel by Mike Carey. He wrote the screenplay. It's structured so well that every character, even like the metaphors that the characters use fit into place so that everything comes together in the end and it all makes sense. It's it's really good. Great performances. A little got the scares at times, and it's really thoughtful about the situation and about the characters and about the entire genre, really, of zombie movies and all of that. So that is my number 8, The Girl with All the Gifts.
Yeah, I appreciate a good zombie movie that will like turn it on its head and do something different that's not just straight up George A. Romero like bloodfest all over the place. Like I'm glad like what you're saying like what Joel has said, because I'm a full disclosure. Joel's been telling me to watch this since March. It's almost been a year, and I probably will not watch it. But to be honest with you, I do have Amazon Prime now, and it is on there.
Oh, good.
So
it is on there. Yeah,
I will get to it at some point. So don't badger me. But no, I'm looking forward to it. You both have praised it, and I will definitely get on it. Joel, are you going to pass on this? I have a feeling that you might.
No, actually, this one didn't make my list. It's a really, yeah, I know, it's a really special movie. This is the other one, like the other big one, I guess. Mark's turned me on to a lot of movies this year, but the two really significant ones were Trophy and this is probably like my number. It's somewhere right out there. I don't know what number, but I never plot that out that far. But it's really good. It's everything you say. It was my first 4-star movie of the year, and I'm glad that you highlighted that for me. It's Sania Nanua is terrific in that movie. I believe that Glenn Close is still in my Best Supporting Actress slate. She's really good here in kind of sneaky ways I didn't expect. And another thing I wanted to pinpoint is in a lot of sci-fi movies, there's a lot of exposition, but it's kind of establishing from the ground up all of the concepts of the movie, and here it kind of like throws you in the middle of this world rather than, it's like Mark was saying, it doesn't structure it normally. It doesn't tell you every single little detail. The exposition is largely already known to the characters. It treats it as this existing world rather than a world that it has to introduce to us, and I really like that aspect about it. That was one of the best aspects of the screenplay. I haven't read the book. I've heard really good things. I know it's based on.
To pick up the book too.
Yeah, it's certainly this movie has turned me on to the book. That's probably likely part of the reason it was made. I'm sure to get people kind of interested in it, and then to read the source material, and it's fantastic. It's really good, like literary science fiction in a way that a lot of science fiction movies today aren't. And I'm a big sci-fi fan, so certainly I'm going to pick that up. But really good choice. I'm so glad that you stumped for this movie this year, and get it out there. Get people to see it. It's on Amazon Prime. If you have Prime, literally you don't have to pay for it. So just go watch it and enjoy yourself. So.
Yeah, no, listen, you guys have been praising it for almost a year now, so like I said, eventually when I'm on my deathbed in about 50 years, I'll check it out. All right, so my number 8 is a film that I saw literally last week as a double feature. Joel knows where I'm going with this one. I had to kick out The Big Sick. And so you're probably wondering, why kick that movie out? It's wonderful. Well, you're absolutely right. It is wonderful. But the two films I saw last week, and I will not mention one of them, because it may or may not be on my list, but the first one I saw during the day was a movie I've heard a lot of things about through the festival circuits, mainly driven towards the main actress performance and the supporting actress performance. I just had a blast from start to finish, and I gotta tell you, I just thought it was a really well-made movie when you talk about the humor or the acting or, the fact that we have, like, empathy for this, character at the very end of it. I'm going with I, Tonya. Like I said, I didn't know what to expect going into this, but I thought the film was energetic. I actually like the comedic, like darkly comedic take they took on it. A lot of people that will turn off going into it, because a lot of people are expecting, this serious drama about when Nancy Kerrigan had her knee busted. And it's like, yeah, that stuff is there, but they take it in a more comedic route. They have a lot of, interview scenes, so it's kind of cool to have these characters older and then have them talk about their younger selves and break the fourth wall sometimes. I don't know. I just thought it was a good mix for this type of character because, Tonya Harding is not like a traditional figure skater. They even state that in the movie, which I thought was appropriate because it matches this kind of like zany, insane style of the movie. So they say in the movie that, one of the judges, tells her, like, you're not really an image of figure skating. You're supposed to be, graceful and have a lot of poise. And she's like, in layman's terms, suck my dick. And so it's like, I appreciate that because she is a person who, when people look at her on the surface, oh, she's rough around the edges, like, we shouldn't take her seriously, but she was one of the best skaters in the world. People tend to forget that. They just look at her antics and, with the whole, thing behind Nancy Kerrigan, rightfully so. I mean, it's sketchy stuff, folks, but she was one of the best skaters, and you can definitely see the passion that she had within her, even though her mom does push her to some insane lengths to go to those places, but she tapped into her full potential. She got wrapped up in this story. And then, towards the end, you feel a lot of empathy for her. And I think that has to do with Margot Robbie's performance. She is absolutely outstanding in this movie. She brings that kind of comedic rough edge at the very beginning. And then towards the end, you're like, wow, even with all this crazy stuff that happened, I kind of want to see you, continue to escape. But, if you guys know the story, that doesn't happen. Also, to touch upon another driving force behind this movie, yes, Allison Janney is amazing as her mother. She is just downright foul-mouthed, and you hate her, but at the same time you love her. It's like you understand why she's pushing her kid, even though she does some really terrible things in the movie. Also, another underlooked performance, Sebastian Stan. Listen, I'm a huge comic book fan. You guys know this, and I'm sure Mark just rolled his eyes. But listen, I've liked him, as Winter Soldier, Bucky and all that stuff. But I always like seeing actors do different stuff beyond their comic book roles. And I actually thought Sebastian Stan was really scary in this movie. He was very terrifying, as this abusive husband that Tanya had with, Galula, his last name.
Galuli.
Yeah, Galuli, sorry. It was one of those weird names where it sounds like you have a sock stuffed in your mouth. Galuli, he plays that character who, does kind of organize this whole, behind the scenes thing of, what happened. And, it's just one of those crazy stories to where, when I saw the trailer to it, I got amped to see it, right? But when I saw the critic quote, it's like the Goodfellas of ice skating, I was like, I'm not going to take that quote seriously. No, it's like the Goodfellas of ice skating. It's actually quite entertaining in that regard, but I think everything else is so well done. It's such an energetic film. It never slows down, and I absolutely love it from start to finish. And I know a lot of people will be turned off at the fact that, they take this serious story and they spin it into a darkly comedic manner. I thought it worked because Tonya Harding herself is zany and kind of rough-edged, kind of like the film, so I actually thought it matched her personality. So, Tonya is my number 8. Mark, would you like to pass on that, or would you like to say your thoughts?
No, I feel comfortable talking about it right now.
Oh.
I'm just, listening to this, I'm realizing, I might have been the only person who, of the three of us, who grew up with this story. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, so just to give you guys some a brief overview of our age, Joel and I, we are millennials, and Mark just threw up. He realizes that he's hanging out with two millennials tonight, and yes.
No, I do, but I just wanted to confirm it.
Yes,
I'm fascinated by this because I was not quite a teenager when all this happened, but I remember being watching this unfold with everybody else in the country, and how everybody just assumed that Tonya Harding was a monster, that she had something to do with it. And I love the way they play with that. But also, I was apparently strange because while everybody else was saying, oh, she was obviously in on it and everything, I just kept thinking, why isn't everybody saying what a good figure skater she is? She was like the first female figure skater to do a triple axel and all this. And even after the attack of Nancy Kerrigan, I kept thinking it sucks that all this happened to her because she was really good.
Yeah.
So for me watching this film, it was really weird seeing it. Apparently now we're finally catching up as a culture to see these people with a little bit more depth and to see what's behind those sensationalized stories in the media. And that's what I think the film really does well, is to capture that, the way that this was like the first time that like a news story became all encompassing. It everything. Your local news would talk about it, the national news would talk about it. They had all those tabloid um, news shows like Hard Copy and all those, and that was the only thing they would talk about, like whenever it was on. And so I feel like it captures that spirit of, we're going to cover everything that we can, because there are obviously generations now that don't remember this happening, and for everybody else who did, like I didn't know. I after all the brouhaha ended, I wasn't paying attention to Tanya Harding or Nancy Kerrigan at all, but so I didn't know about, her history of abuse and all of this stuff going on. I didn't know that. And so to see that unfold was enlightening, to see how she ended up where she was and why people saw her the way that she was portrayed in the media, and also just her own attitude and how that kind of helped with her downfall. Because when you're out there saying I'm the best and everyone who doesn't think I'm the best is terrible, no one's going to like you. And I enjoyed it. So, but it was interesting listening to talk about it, because I'm like, I don't think he remembers this at all. Because
ladies and gentlemen, I was born in 1990. So
you were 3 or 4 when it happened. So.
Exactly. I don't remember anything. It was weird because like when I was a kid, like literally before 5 years old, it's like, OJ, Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding. It's like a bunch of stuff happened before I hit kindergarten. So there you go, world. Joel, you still haven't seen this yet, correct?
That's correct. I'm seeing it within the week. It's going to be one of the movies that I review next week. So I'm looking forward to it after everything that's been written, for sure. This story is fascinating, so I can't wait to see Margot Robbie, however you say that, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm glad she's getting some nice meaty roles now, because she's been great in even lesser stuff than this, I think, and so it's nice. I think she's a great actress. So
yeah, she was probably the most tolerable thing about Suicide Squad. So
yeah.
Pretty much. So my number 8 is The Lost City of Z. This one was one that I saw back in April. I love director James Gray. I'm a huge fan of We Own the Night. I'm a huge fan of The Yards. And The Immigrant a few years ago was a real highlight. Love that one. So I think it was kind of written in the stars that I would love this, I guess. But I did. It's really an engrossing account of Percy Fawcett's exploration of the Amazon to try to find the lost city of Z. He becomes obsessed with it. He brings along a crew, including Robert Pattinson and Matthew McFadden, as a couple of the members. Both really good performances from them. Charlie Hunnam plays Percy Fawcett in one of the year's best performances, I think. It's certainly he certainly comports himself better than he did in King Arthur. A few weeks, pretty much, and just lots better than King Arthur. But yeah, I found myself completely wrapped up in this story. It's a story about obsession. It's a story about exploration versus colonization, or colonialism, whatever you want to call it. The people that he answers to really want to colonize this lost city rather than explore it and actually be a part of be a part of the scientific process, if you will. They would rather just colonize the place and throw everybody out, kill them all, and then take the town for their own. But he will not stand for it. He is all about history and respecting legacy and all that. And there's a great meaty role for his wife, played by Sienna Miller. She's been terrific for a while now in these kinds of roles where it doesn't ask a whole lot of her, although I would argue that the last scene does in this movie. It's a great ending, and this one was my number 1 at the midway point of the year, and it kind of dipped down with a rewatch that just kind of made it fall below some other movies. But it is fantastic. Anybody who enjoys this kind of it's sort of like if it's sort of like Aguirre, The Wrath of God. It's in that vein, a little less crazy. It's a little less about a crazy character. But it's in that vein. It's very much in the 1970s cinema vein, and I really appreciated the craft and the especially the photography and. But I will let Chase tell the story of his viewing of this movie because it's sad.
Yeah, it's extremely sad. So here's the deal, folks. When I go to these film festivals, I want to be enlightened. I want to be charmed. I want to be swayed by some great entertainment, right? And so the last film that I saw in my 13-film catalog was The Lost City of Z. I sat there. I was prepared for it. And the movie started. I was like, wow, this is visually beautiful. But there's something wrong. The audio was too low. So I was like, okay, maybe it's just like a couple scenes. Maybe the speakers are a little low. Maybe someone will say something. The whole movie goes by. It never changed. I don't know what was up with my theater, but like the whole time, the audio was so low when they got into like the brief action scenes, with like arrows flying or whatever, people running through rivers. Like the sound design was so low. I'm sitting there going, there's no way people are just sitting here just taking this and going, yeah, that sounds really great. It's like, I guess I was on crazy pills because I couldn't hear it. So I told Joel when I got out of it, yes, I had technically seen the movie, but I can't review it because I didn't see the full movie. I saw like visuals with like almost like if someone like put a bunch of earwax in the ear and like you were trying to like talk to them and you can't hear anything. Like that's what it sounded like. It was like a very muffled, low volume thing, and it just made me so angry. So, and I've still yet to rewatch it. Yeah, that was my experience. So good stuff. Mark, just real quick, did you see this one?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Did you want to pass?
No, I'm not going to pass. Joel's pretty much got it. It's the only thing I want to add is it's a tragedy. In the traditional sense, where it's about this person who has a central flaw and carries through on it to the very end, and it's a solid film. And yeah, Charlie Hunnam is I've always thought he was kind of bland. He's really good here, so that was quite a surprise. So yeah, it's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, so just real quick, if you were sitting in my theater and you thought that was, when you saw it back in April, if you thought that was a well-sounded movie, then you probably were listening through a traffic cone because I don't know how you were listening to that thing. Anyways, I'm done with that. So Mark did 10 through 8, so I'm going to have Joel start off with 7 through 5. So Joel, cool. Go ahead. Let's start with you first. What is your number 7?
Okay, so my number 7 is Coco, which is one of the best Pixar movies ever made. Likely...
it's my number 7, too. I just want to throw that out there.
Oh, nice. Hey, our luck today. So what a great segues, though, right? Yeah, I loved every inch of this movie. It's so, like, macabre and just it's occasionally creepy, but because it's Pixar, it's also really funny and lovable. It's about this boy who has had a curse placed, essentially a curse, or some people believe that there has been a curse placed on his family in regards to music because of the fact that his great-great-grandfather left to become a musician and abandoned the family in the process. So he feels like he's being drawn to music, so he wants to, find a way to play it, and his family won't allow him. So he stumbles across a famous Mexican pop star's guitar in the town, and that sends him on a journey to find his grandfather, or his great-great-grandfather, I should say, in the land of the dead. And I've kind of hidden very important things in that plot synopsis because there are surprises here. Some really dark ones. I won't say this I won't reveal anything, but we actually see a murder in this movie. We see it happen. And
Pixar, I see you. That was one of the darkest things I've ever seen in a kid's film. I don't know how you got away with that. I don't know who approved of that, but good job.
I guess maybe the same people who saw that were the ones who saw all of the car deaths in Cars 2. Maybe the same people in the MPAA who decided to rate that movie a G. I don't know. Probably the same group. Yep. Anyway, but no, it's really special. Everything about this movie works. The voice work is incredible. It's not like some A-list cast, but it is a starry cast. I was actually telling Chase about this. Like there's Gabriel Iglesias has a little role here. It's like Edward James Olmos. It's a great cast of Spanish actors and Mexican actors, all put together, and it's just it's pure magic. It's wonderful. The song too, the original song that comes out of this movie called "Remember Me," right to the heartstrings. Chase just play acted like he had a heart attack, and it's really true. It really does get to the heart. It starts out as this like lively pop song, just to kind of get us introduced to a certain character, and then at the end it completely transforms into something much more meaningful and resonant, and it sends the movie out on a note of like transcendence. It's amazing. So, Mark, are you gonna pass, or are
I am not gonna pass? It's in my honorable mentions.
Okay. Yeah, I knew you were pretty high on this one this year. So.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed this. I mean, I know Chase is going to talk about it, so I won't take up too much time. But another dark moment that I saw like happening about 3 seconds before it actually did, and I started laughing in the screening room with a couple other people who noticed it. But Ernesto de la Cruz's final performance.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
As soon as you see that one cutaway, you're like, oh, I know what's coming. There's no way they're going to do that. And sure enough, they did.
Yeah.
They did.
And graphically, and pretty graphically. I mean, not blood graphically, but they literally show it. Yeah. I mean, it's graphic. It's a great,
really funny, and it's really heartfelt, and it got a little misty by the end. It's good.
I'll really turn it over to Chase now for his spiel.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what Joel and I were talking about when we did our episode. It's a word to describe this: beautiful. Whether you want to talk about the family aspects or the animation or just the overall themes and the sense of family, sense of belonging, finding yourself, everything about this movie is just simply beautiful. It touches upon a sensitive subject for kids, which is death, and I actually think they do it in such a mature way, and even showing that graphic death on screen, this is one of the most mature things they've ever done, and I was actually surprised on the amount of little kids in my screening. Now, I will say the one thing that irritated about this movie was not the movie itself, was that stupid Frozen short. I don't care if you like it or not, it should have never been in front of it. End of story. All right, so back to the movie. All right, so as the movie was playing or whatever, I got this sense of like this, mature adult theme going throughout, and I was kind of listening around to see if any kids were like poking their parents or whatever, like mommy, what's that? What's that skeleton talking for or whatever. But honestly, it was a silent crowd, and I was actually kind of stunned that even with that graphic death, that all these kids were just so in awe at what was going on, and
both graphic deaths.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, both graphic deaths, and I just found the whole movie from start to finish just an absolutely just encompassing film that had wonderful, realistic, beautiful animation, which, by the way, ever since I saw A Good Dinosaur, Pixar, I don't know what kind of engine farms you're using for your environments and your backgrounds, but they looking photorealistic and they're looking kind of scary. And it's just like with this one, I thought Mexico was just handled so beautifully. The Land of the Dead was just so wonderful with the colors. They were beautiful to look at and just a great sense of world building. I thought they captured the Mexican culture pretty well. And like Joel said, the voice talent was just great. They just bring these characters to life. It's just an all-around beautiful movie. And I actually think that even with the first 10 minutes of Up, or even with the Inferno scene in Toy Story 3, Coco is without a doubt one of their most mature things they've ever done. And if they keep going down this road and just keep evolving as a studio, that's where they need to go, is just to kind of evolve into this, more adult brand, but kid-friendly, and kind of introduce kids to these adult ideas. Because when you look back at the first Toy Story, Joel and I were at the appropriate age because we're young and stupid. We were around 5 or 6 years old, and when that movie came out, yes, it was... it was funny, it was entertaining, like, woo, colors, animation. But as you kind of grow up with the studio, it's just so amazing to see them grow. It's almost like seeing a kid grow up. It's like when you start as, with Toy Story and A Bug's Life, it's like, cool, they're a studio getting off the ground, trying to find their footing. But then when you see, like, Up and Coco and all these, like, films they've done in the past, like, 5 years, it's simply amazing to see their evolution, and Coco is one of the best, period. So I have said enough about it. Joel and I we will praise it highly. Mark loves it too, so please, because I know a lot of people are kind of throwing this one off to the side a little bit. They're just like, oh, it's not Toy Story. It's like, listen, at this point, if you're not giving Pixar at least a chance, I don't know you. All right, so that is our recommendation for that one. So, Mark, I'm curious now. So, Joel and I went the Pixar route. Which route did you go for number 7?
I did not go the Pixar route. I went probably the opposite route.
Oh, whoops.
I went with the Romanian film Graduation.
That is way different, by the way.
It's a little bit different. So this is a film about power. And it's not big power. It's not like, presidents and politicians and, in high office and everything. It's the little tiny power that everybody in society has, whether it's, like a police officer just randomly going about his job, or a business owner, or a doctor, as the main character in Graduation is. And it's a film about how power corrupts. Now, everybody says that absolute power corrupts absolutely, but this film kind of puts forward the idea that if you have just a little bit of power, you're going to still end up being corrupted just a little bit, and probably just enough. So the main character is Romeo. He's played by Adrian Titieni. It's a Romanian name. I butchered it, and I apologize. His daughter is assaulted on her way to school, to high school, and he ends up trying to figure out what happened. And also, she is about to graduate from high school, and he wants to get her out of the country, out of the city, out of the country, and just move on from this life. And so he kind of sets up this little scheme with some people, like I think a police officer knows somebody who's on the school board, who knows somebody who's involved in the test scoring. And since she's having a hard time, obviously, focusing on taking her final exams, he's going to figure out a way to make sure that she passes them and is able to graduate and get into the university of her choice. And all of that little thing, that little bargain of just trying to do that, ends up spinning his life out of control in really subtle ways, because now he owes other people favors. There are people who want him to give them favors because he's a doctor, and there are some, obviously sick people who could use some, a little bit of a little bit of higher spacing, like on like an organ transplant list. And so all of these little favors, and you start to realize like how corrupt these people are. Even the main character, who seems pretty good, his life is a mess, and it slowly unravels how all these little lies, and you start to kind of think like, is that the only thing that's actually keeping them together as a family and as a culture and as a society, are just these little lies that they keep telling themselves and each other? It's really dense. It seems like a morality play, but it's a lot more than that, because you do start to think like, can we really judge any of these people for the things they're doing, or is this just the way things are? Is there a better way to do it? It's rough. It's written and directed by Christian Mungui. Once again, apologies.
Christian Munju.
That sounds so much better than what I said. I was just reading it, so that sounds much better. So we'll go with that.
Trust me, Mark. He does this every single week with foreign films. Like Joel will be like, the cinematographer was this. I'm like, I can't even pronounce the word "the," and he's just like spouting off these names like he's like this, doctorate in little. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. That's fine. I was so happy. I was so happy when I learned how to say Saoirse Ronan. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah. So. Oh, sorry. If you had.
Oh no, I'm good. It's the complex morality tale and more.
Yeah. It really is. It's not on my list, but it's Adrian Titieni is in my list of best actor nominees. He's incredible here. And you know what? It kind of reminded me of was Changing Lanes in a certain way, because it's about this there's very tiny conflict, like in the big picture sense, a tiny conflict that is structured sort of like a thriller, but it doesn't actually quite go there. It doesn't rise to that level of being a thriller, even though it kind of has the notes of a thriller, and it sort of has that thriller structure, and it really reminded me consistently of Changing Lanes, which is a movie I love, and it's very well worth checking out. So my number 6. And it's time for Mark to yell at me, I think.
Oh.
So it's The Florida Project. It's from director Sean Baker, who directed one of the best movies of the year in 2015 with Tangerine, transgender buddy comedy, and here follows it up with a movie set in a hotel set outside Disney World. In fact, the title, I learned this from Brian Tallarico, Mark. The title... I didn't know this, but the title refers to the original working title of Disney World. It was called The Florida Project early on, before they actually did anything with it. So it's pretty neat. And I've actually driven by this hotel. Pretty neat little thing. We went to Disney World a couple of years ago, and we used this particular entrance that they are located by, and we drove by that hotel that they used.
You went by the purple place? You saw the purple place?
I saw the purple place before knowing that it was that. But yeah, it's the purple place. It's the movie doesn't really have a plot, so to speak. It has elements of a plot, but it's really about a set of characters, primarily a mother and daughter pair played by Bria Vinate and Brooklyn Kimberly Prince, who the mother has just early on is fired from her stripping job. And must find a different kind of way of providing for her daughter in this hotel where it's, I think Willem Dafoe put it really well, it's kind of temporary permanent living. And Willem Dafoe, by the way, plays the hotel manager. A great performance from him, one of his best, if not his best. He's likely going to win Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. And he is sort of like both father and villain in this place. He has he's very much a manager. He does his job as well as he can, which sometimes means tending to these people's needs as as horrible as that may sometimes be. And it's just a film of terrific compassion. We follow from the child's perspective, Brooklyn Kimberly Prince, who plays Mooney, and it's a movie about innocence, right up to the very divisive final shot, which is one of the movie moments of the year for me. But I won't give it away or anything. I'll just say that it's very divisive, and there are people who do not like it. I have a feeling that we're going to get into this movie a little later.
Yes, we will.
Possibly on both ends. I'm not quite sure, but. Yeah, it's amazing because there's some backlash that has happened. Apparently, this movie is too apologetic regarding the mother's activities here, and I guess it's from the same people who have hang-ups about a certain character in another movie that we'll mention on this list.
Yeah. Oh, good for them.
Oh, great. Anyway. Armchair philosophers. In any case, I don't have any problem with it. It's a movie told from the child's perspective, which means that we're going to receive all of this information through the veneer of a child's understanding of it, or most of it at least. There are some times where it diverges from that. We get some of it from Willem Dafoe's perspective, some of it from the mother's perspective, but in any case, it's a movie of great compassion and kind of moves. I put it in my review. It moves with the unpredictability of real life. There are, and some of this movie was ad-libbed. Like there's a moment involving, I think that they're flamingos or pelicans or something, and that was completely ad-libbed. They actually wandered onto the set, and Willem Dafoe just waved them off, and you see him do it. That was like supposed to be some other scene, and they were on their, I guess, last take or lasted a couple of takes, and they wandered onto the set, and so he went out and shooed them away with exactly what you'd hear. And it was just captured, and there's also the helicopter that goes overhead is the real helicopter that shuttles people to and from, places to Disney World, and they didn't have enough in the budget to pay them off to not do it, so it just becomes a feature of the scene, and I love that. It's such a naturalistic movie, and yet is somehow sixth on my list. But it just goes to show you how great this year is.
Yeah, so I'm assuming with that jab at Mark is higher on your list. So, I'll go ahead and just say that, first of all, that was probably the best week that Joel and I ever experienced, because we saw the Florida Project on Monday, and 2 days later we saw The Snowman. So wrap your heads around that. All right, so, no, the Florida Project it's a really good movie. Like you said, it portrays real people and real situations. It's grounded, it's beautiful, it's very sad, and I made this joke last week, so I'll make it in front of Mark and see how he reacts to it. So Joel knows where I'm going with this. But it is very interesting that this movie had a precursor to a Roy Moore scene that we just didn't really see coming. And then, once the election happened. All right, so thank you, folks. I'll be here all week. They know what scene I'm talking about. Basically, Willem Dafoe shoos away Roy Moore in the scene. All right, so, sorry. Anyways, I totally agree with you. Brooklyn Prince, amazing performance. That last final bit that she has her literally growing up right then and there, trying to comprehend what was happening and having the real world just kind of hit her in the face, which is ironic that you bring the Florida Project up. Because my number 6, main character, literally has to do the same thing Brooklyn Prince's character does. Now, you two have no idea where I'm going with this, so I'm going to go ahead and just set this up like I normally do and tease you guys. So, all right. I saw this film back in April, and I saw it with like 5 other critics, because they had like one of those like press only screenings like in the middle of the freaking day, and I had to take off of work, and it was totally worth it. I get there, I watch it, absolutely loved it. I texted Joel about it, and he's giving me a look right now because he doesn't know which one I'm talking about. So I texted him about it. I was like, dude, this movie's really good. I think it will hold up on my middle of the year list, and it did. And then as the year kept going, I started seeing more movies. But the thing is, I couldn't get it out of my head. There was another screening for it at the end of June. I couldn't attend it because I was in the hospital. So, I haven't been able to rewatch it yet. However, ever since I saw Brigsby Bear back in April, I have yet to get that movie out of my head, because I always like to put a charming movie on my list, and that is without a doubt the most charming movie I have seen all year, and has the biggest heart to it. And it's also my favorite Mark Hamill movie out of the year. So screw you, Star Wars. I love you, but this is definitely the one. No, seriously, though, when the movie starts out, I had no idea what to expect. I like Kyle Mooney's kind of dry humor on SNL. Him and Beck Bennett have some of the best segments on the show as of now in the modern cast. And so with Kyle Mooney, being involved with the pre-production and, of course, playing the main character, I honestly didn't know what to expect, because this was also produced by The Lonely Island as one of their Lonely Island classics, which is such a great title. It's a play on Sony Pictures classics. And so, totally unexpected when the movie starts out with, Kyle Mooney's character watching this Brigsby Bear show that's almost reminiscent of like a Barney show. And he lives out in the middle of nowhere with his parents, who his dad played by Mark Hamill. And I have no idea where this movie's going, and I don't want to spoil it, but I will say that there's something that happens, and he has to be taken away from his parents. He's placed under a different, roof with different people, and this is almost like a man-child, because he's been so secluded from society, and he doesn't really have any social skills. He's kind of awkward, and the only thing he knows in his life is Brigsby Bear, this fictional character that he's kind of grasped onto as his only friend. And so when he gets out in the real world, he wants to essentially make a Brigsby Bear movie, because the TV show that he had been watching was his only outlet for entertainment, friends, like I said, and it never ended. So when he was stripped away from that environment, he had to pretty much cope with the fact that he lost his only thing, so he wanted to have it back in his life and have a finale to Brigsby Bear, which was a great kind of finale to his old life. And I thought that was kind of sweet. Like I said, charming. It was funny. It has Kyle Mooney's dry humor. And believe it or not, this movie has some great dramatic moments that actually got me. Like, there's a scene where Kyle Mooney's on the couch. He's got to accept, hard truths. And I was like, wow, he's actually a really good actor. Because when you watch Saturday Night Live, these actors, yes, they have, a comedic presence, and you just associate them with, sketch comedy. But it's kind of surprising when they bring out such, humanity and heart to their characters. I was like, wow, this is kind of impressive. It's a movie about making a movie, essentially, and I just thought, like, overall, I thought the humor worked. I thought the characters were super likable and charming and enjoyable. I loved following Kyle Mooney's character. He was such a delight to watch, and I wanted him to succeed in his task. And at the very end of the movie, it's very awkward and humorous when you see the final product of the movie that they're making, but at the same time, you feel a completion for his character. You feel just full of heart and joy. You're just like, thank you for completing your goal, because that was such a great ride. Listen, I haven't been able to get it out of my head since April. It's still on there, and it's higher than Lady Bird. Now Joel is furious. So I'm going to throw it over to Mark real fast, because I've already talked to Joel ad nauseum about this movie. Did you see Brigsby Bear, and what did you think of it?
I did. And I'm not a big fan of it.
That's okay. I mean, it's all good.
I know a couple of people who really do enjoy it a lot, but I kind of felt a little bit uncomfortable of taking I won't, since you didn't give it away, I won't give it away. But taking that situation, which is kind of a form of psychological abuse, and turning it into a
which I will give you, by the way. I'm not taking that away at all, because it's very kind of dark a little bit. So.
And I'm fine with that. It starts off interesting of using that as kind of like a satirical jab at, being a fan, like a devoted, obsessed fan of something. That's, for me, that kind of worked. But once it starts getting into feel-good territory, it did not. I'm just thinking, like, everybody who's going along with his little plan is kind of keeping that entire... it's not technically gaslighting, but that's the closest thing I can come to.
I mean, you're right, because I'm gonna go ahead and just say it. They're pretty much a group of enablers, like enabling an alcohol abuser or something. Like it's something kind of along those lines. So I totally get it, but I guess it was just the charm about the movie that worked for me, because it was just super likable.
If you can get past that, then I can see that. But I could not.
I am a demented person, Mark. So congratulations, you know me now. I'm a dark human being, as you will probably tell from one of my picks in my top 3. So I know Joel still hasn't seen this, but do you have any comment of Brigsby Bear?
I really tried to see this. I actually rented it from work and then ran out of time.
Quote unquote, he ran out of time. He probably talked to Mark about it, and Mark was like, "I didn't really care for it." And he's just like, "Well, Chase is an idiot. Then I'm not going to trust him."
No, not at all. I was interested in seeing this. It's an eclectic cast. I mean, it doesn't just have Mark Hamill. It's got Greg Kinnear. I don't see very often anymore, and
Claire
I like
Danes.
him. Yeah, Claire Danes. Yeah. So. At some point, I will see this. It's probably whenever you get around to The Girl with All the Gifts, I will get around to this on my deathbed. On my deathbed. So, Mark, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is Dunkirk. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Nice. So we've already talked about this a little bit, but so what do I want to talk about it? Let's see. I was fascinated by the way that it changes time.
Yeah.
Not just it just that was the thing that struck me. It's like Nolan really seems kind of almost obsessed with the concept of time, which is really neat in film, because obviously that's a big part of it. We're going to get into that a little bit later, I think, with another one of the films on my list. But just this concept of having like everything that's taking place on the beach is like over the course of, I think, a week. All the stuff in the air is like about like an hour. Yeah. And then all the stuff on the boat is over the course of a day. Yeah. And so all these scenes just keep getting intercut between each other. And it's never confusing, because you can get a sense of how all of that time is playing out, but it makes it seem like things that are happening like maybe days apart are happening at the exact same time. And just that feeling of knowing that it's different and also knowing that it's the same because of the images and the motifs that Nolan uses throughout it. And it's just this sense of like, time being relative and war being a constant. And it's really well executed. And in terms of like just suspenseful filmmaking, yeah, I know that Chase, you talked about the dogfight scenes. The thing that I knew like this is going to be intense was the moment that Tom Hardy in his plane, he's like just trying to straighten out his plane, and they're like the rudders are like clinking and clattering, and I'm like, it's so intense, just the sound of and that simple act of just trying to get the plane level. I'm like, oh my god. So obviously all the war sequences themselves are really intense too, but it's really.
I should have mentioned the time aspect because Nolan is fascinated with time. He sort of relative time in one's own head with something like Inception, where you had the different levels down were different lengths of time. With Dark Knight Rises, he would regularly kind of jump forward in time with no warning. That was one of the complaints about that movie, but it certainly was an aspect of it.
Yeah. And obviously Interstellar.
Interstellar, yeah. I mean, Interstellar was a big one because the whole thing was time travel. It was literally about that. But somehow I feel like, in terms of ambition, this is his most ambitious use of time because, it's like you put it, Mark. I just keep putting things how you put it. War is a constant, but time is relative, and so you have all of these events. We see them happening at the same time, but really they happen, a week and a day removed from each other. And it's totally fascinating. Lee Smith, if Lee Smith does not win Best Film Editing, then there's no reason for the Best Film Editing category at the Oscars. And sound design, for sure. Yeah. But particularly film editing. Hopefully they do, to make up for the fact that Inception wasn't even nominated. That's a movie that I turned around on, by the way. I know that I think last time I talked to you about it, I wasn't a fan, but I totally had a turnaround on that movie this year. I don't know either. I don't know what I was smoking, but
whatever I was, apparently, because I'm still that, and I have not had a feeling to revisit it again.
Okay, so. I would do that.
Okay.
So he won't. So yeah, I totally love that movie. It's great. Somehow just number 9, but. All right, so so that's moving up to my number 5, and Mark just hinted that this movie is going to be higher on his list, and this is where I have it. A Ghost Story from director David Lowery. This is fascinating, and this is some of the boldest filmmaking of the year. Basically, it's a very simple concept. That's the only thing that's simple about this movie is the concept. Basically, Casey Affleck stars as this man. We never actually learn his name. He's just credited as C. And he dies in this freak accident right at the end of his driveway. And so his wife / girlfriend / fiance, we never learn what she is. I am assuming fiance, to be completely honest, because of with the stage of their relationship that they seem to be at. But in any case, she has to cope with this. That's not really what the movie's about. It is for some time. We see her in the different stages of grief, including an extended scene and a powerful scene of her eating pie. The first pie that she had ever eaten, by the way, Rooney Mara. That's become a famous thing. That pie was a single take, first of all, and it was the only pie that she had ever eaten up until that point. Anyway, a lot of people hate this scene because it goes on too long, quote unquote. Whatever. I reject that idea. But in any case, we see that for a while, and then it becomes something else. Let's just say it shifts through space, time, gravity, whatever you want to say, the whole continuum. It takes a huge right and left turn, all the turns. It's driving in multiple cars. It takes all the turns. It takes a U-turn. I'm just kidding. It's fascinating.
No, you're not. You're not kidding. That's
I'm not kidding. Actually, it kind of does take a U-turn. I totally just realized that. But it's fascinating. It's bold. I've never seen anything like this movie before. and I praise the fact that it exists. I mean, it's I guess like on first sniff or whatever you call it, Kubrickian, but it's really not. I watched it again recently, and it's not even like any of his movies. No. You try to compare them. Use easy comparison points for other people, but there's nothing here. There's no movie like this. And again, somehow only my number 5. This would be number 1 any other year. But that just goes to show you how much I love the Snowman. I'm just kidding. No, but I love this. I think that the performances are all great. Casey Affleck, who is always under the sheet, by the way. Mm-hmm. I read that in an interview. Usually, sometimes they'll use body doubles if it doesn't matter. But also that takes budget, so this was made for next to nothing. And he is always under that sheet. So which really imbues the, if you want to call it a character of the ghost here, which, by the way, they return to the Charlie Brown kind of Halloween costume of the ghost, the sheet with the eyes, not really holes here, but they're sort of dark patches for the eyes, and he gives it character, and just barely, just enough to count. And it's a great performance when he's outside of it. This is also another case of an original song. I believe it's an original song that was written for the movie and needs to be nominated for an Oscar. It's a song that is used in the midway point of the movie that is terrific. But yeah, and Rooney Mara is great. There are other people in this movie. There's a scene with a philosopher, let's just call him, that people hate, by the way. The people who hate this movie hate that scene because they think that it sums up the movie. And I actually think that it's not doing that at all. I think that the movie doesn't believe what he's saying. But in any case, it's fascinating. So it's bold, it's audacious. We need this kind of audacity. So hopefully we get that in 2018. Yeah,
that's what I really love about David Lowery is that, he's just a local gritty director. Like he films most of his stuff here in Texas where he came from, and I love when you have people that grew up, where they grew up, make films and just make something special, and that's what a ghost story is. And I don't care what anyone says about that scene. Listen, if anyone's ever been to a party and smokes or drinks, we all become philosophers, by the way. So that was actually a true scene. Like every time when I drink and go to a party, I'm like, hey man, you want to talk about time and the present and past? It's like we all become philosophers, and that's exactly what that guy was doing. So I bought every single word, and it was a fascinating monologue. But what really clutched a ghost story for me was I'm telling you, that last third act. It takes so many weird turns, but you're like, I didn't see that coming, and it actually works. Because when you think about the concept of, time and, death and all that stuff, that totally makes sense. And so I love a ghost story. Not on my list. It was for a long time, by the way, but once again, tough list to crack. So I'm assuming, since Joel took another dig at you, Mark, I'm assuming it's on your list as well?
Yeah, it will be on my list. I'm going to pass for now on this.
Okay, so I guess I will go ahead and start with my number 5. This is one of those movies where when Joel and I both saw it, we couldn't stop raving about it. And I remember when we did our podcast episode, we had nothing but positive things, and I don't think we barely had any negatives to talk about it. Listen, I don't say this lightly, but I will say it for this one. Even with the first movie being, I think, a very good one, when you have the sequel and the third one be vastly superior to that first one, I can overlook the first one's kind of, lackluster a little bit, and I can actually tell you without a doubt that the Planet of the Apes prequel trilogy is one of the best trilogies I've ever seen from a main blockbuster studio. War for the Planet of the Apes is my number 5. This thing has been on my list ever since I saw it. I did not touch it. I wanted to keep it there. It is one of the best finales I've seen. And make no mistake about it, folks. If you're still hesitant on seeing it, this does not have a lot of war in it. It does not have a lot of battle sequences in it. It's more of a character study. It's more of the growth and the conclusion of Caesar, and how, from the first film, he is just this, little, chimp, and then, he grows up, he doesn't really know what he's doing, and then the second one, he finds his footing, and then in this third one, he becomes such a strong leader that you want him to succeed in everything, and when, I'm not going to say what happens when the movie, progresses. Like, it just starts to get really dire for these, apes, and just the ending. That ending is one of the best endings I've seen all year. It's one of the best ending shots I've seen all year. It's just such a satisfying conclusion. What do you want to talk about? Caesar's character growth, or the menacing portrayal that Woody Harrelson brings, or just the other apes that bring a lot of life and character to the movie. I still love Steve Zahn. Bad ape. Like, come on! That character was not supposed to work. And so this bald little monkey coming out from the hallway, he's talking like a little child. You're like, this is never going to work. This is going to be like a Porg situation from Star Wars. But no, he is fascinating, and he's a monkey that you root for, and like he joins the group, and it's just every single like ape is just so enjoyably likable, and like it's so well done. And I don't even need a comment on Andy Serkis's motion capture performance. This guy, can someone just please give him an honorary Oscar? I know he's not old yet or even dead, but can we like give him something? Because it's getting ridiculous now. When you start to do all these roles and you just get underlooked, it's a crime, okay? And on top of all that, I don't know how they did it. Because when you watch Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the CGI is good. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is breathtaking. I don't know how in the hell that you up the ante for the third one to make it so photorealistic. I feel like they captured animals from a zoo and like put them in front of a camera. It's incredible. Because here's the thing: when you do mocap, you can't take this for granted. Especially when I noticed it in Dawn, you have to use a lot of facial acting. You have to use a lot of eye movements and just mouthing a lot of stuff. Like, you have to have good facial acting, and that is what is extremely key for these movies. And that's what makes them so compelling. Because a movie about apes that can slightly talk, yeah, that could be entertaining and stuff. But the fact that they bring these movies to such depth about the war between humans and apes, and how humans like to play God all the time, and those type of creations fighting back and whatnot. It's such a rich story, and the CGI is breathtaking. The acting is absolutely tremendous. The ending is so satisfying, and it just caps off such a great trilogy. I don't know how you don't put this on your list. I still love it to this day. It has been since July, and 20th Century Fox sent me this lovely screener with special features on it. Like, they're really pushing for it too, and I believe in them. So that is my number 5. I actually, Joel, I know that this is a really high movie for you too. I'm going to assume that it's in your top 4 somewhere. Am I correct?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about this in a few minutes, actually.
Oh, man, look at that. So, Mark,
Cool.
I'm assuming it's not on your list because you giggled at a lot of stuff I said.
I was.
I'm kidding. I'm messing with you. But I am assuming it's not on your list, correct?
It's not. It's not on my list. It was sitting on my list for a while, though. Yeah, we'll pass on it since it'll come up again. I'll talk about it in apparently a couple minutes.
All right then. So Mark, what about you then? What is your number 5? What is that midway point movie that's just like you couldn't go any higher, you couldn't go any lower? It's just it was set in stone as your middle movie.
My number 5 is Catherine Bigelow's Detroit.
Joel,
there we go.
Suck it.
So yeah, there was I don't know what happened. I thought it was great. I thought it was one of Bigelow's best. I think I actually told Joel I thought it was like maybe her best work that she had done so far, at least just in terms of like directing and putting all these elements together. I don't know what happened. I loved it. It's the first 4-star movie on my list. So it's set in the Detroit riots or uprising, whatever you want to call it, and the movie is open to those different perspectives of words and what you see this event as. And it's huge in scope. It starts off so big, so it starts with the riot or the uprising, and it just very gradually narrows down its focus until that final what you're left with is just one character and how everything that happened affected that one character, and you feel that. And yeah, the big, I know you talked about it like it was 80% what happened in the hotel, the incident quote unquote at the Algiers motel where a group of local police officers, tortured and murdered some people that they thought had fired shots at the police, and they hadn't, and they were just trying to plant evidence on them. And it's just some of the most intense and grueling filmmaking that I've seen in a long time. I don't know where the backlash came from. I think Bigelow and Mark Bull, who wrote the screenplay, I think this is their third collaboration together. They do such a good job of setting up the backdrop for how all this happened through that opening with all the paintings, the oil paintings, and you understand the history of like the Great Migration and from the south to the north, and you understand all of this stuff. And I don't know what happened, and I can kind of see maybe like the context of was the brutality really necessary to show all of that? What's the lesson you're supposed to learn out of it? I can kind of see that, but I think it's just there for itself because it happened. Bull has a background as a journalist, and you can sense that in his other screenplays, like for The Hurt Locker and for Zero Dark 30, that it's a lot of well-researched stuff, and you put it together with a narrative, and it feels at points like an act of journalism as opposed to a fictional film. And I think that sometimes just seeing what happened can be enough, especially in the context of today. And I know that that's like the easy go-to with movies that are about the police and excessive violence and racial issues. I know that that's the go-to, but I mean, you gotta remember, like, I'm watching this and seeing the police do this, and in the back of my head, I'm like, maybe like a year or two ago, maybe even less than that, there was this big report about a torture house that the Chicago Police Department had set up, where they would just torture African Americans. And this just came out, and they were doing it for decades. And I mean, it's completely relative to today, whether or not you want to acknowledge it, or whether or not you want to just kind of push it off to the side and say, like, we need to have something deeper than this. I don't think we necessarily need, I don't know how much deeper you can get than seeing it happen, seeing the aftermath. So the entire bit with the trial, and then following that single character afterwards, and you see that this doesn't go away, and it's never going to go away until we actually start looking at it and coming to terms with the fact that it did happen, and it's still happening. I think it's a great film. I will keep defending it.
All right, so I'm going to give Joel 30 seconds to tell us why he hates life and puppies. So Joel, take it away. Why do you hate Detroit?
Puppies are over.
Thank you for being on the show tonight, Joel. We're gonna go ahead and move on. No, I'm just kidding. So I've been waiting for this all year, Mark, because I remember back in August when Joel and I vehemently disagreed on this movie. And then when I realized that you and I were on the same page with this. Because I'm not saying it's perfect by any means, but it's a very good film. So Joel, please let the world know and defend yourself. Why do you still hate this movie?
Well, I don't hate it, first of all, but
we win.
I am conflicted about it, and I guess for me it was harder to. I do need to see it again. I will say that I haven't seen it twice, and this is going to be a hard movie to watch again. Yeah. But I do need to see it again because Mark explained some things that maybe I was like, okay, well, maybe I wasn't thinking about it from that perspective. But for me, the because it happened route made it feel a bit hollow to me. It felt very procedural, and I felt like this story taking that approach was the least interesting route. I felt like we needed more setup, or like a American Crime Story kind of telling of this. This incident, as you called it, as it became known
as they call it, because it wasn't actually a crime.
It's definitely not an incident.
Yeah,
it's not.
It's not an incident. It's really well acted. It's I think the shaking cam can be a little much at times, but it's really intense. It's incredibly well acted. Will Poulter, man, that performance is terrifying, and I was scared every time he was on screen. And Chase is right. He was originally looked at to play Pennywise, and it's kind of perfect. He's got the eyebrows for it. They would need to do so much makeup prosthetics. But it just felt hollow. It felt like I was closing my hand on air, trying to not to care, because obviously it's easy to care about something like this. But as a storytelling venture, I just felt like it was a bit of a hollowed out version of itself. And I love Catherine Bigelow. I haven't seen any. I actually haven't seen anything before The Hurt Locker. I'm hugely interested.
Gotta see Strange Days.
Yeah, I'm hugely interested in that. I'm really interested in K-19, The Widowmaker, which I know isn't one of like her big, important movies, but I've heard it's really solid. I also haven't seen Point Break, which I know a lot of people are like, "What?"
All the dude bros.
You will understand Hot Fuzz a little bit better when you do get around to it.
Yeah, that's a movie I was a little lost on, but I loved it, but I was a little lost on the references. In any case, I love The Hurt Locker. That made my top 10. I love Zero Dark 30. That made my top 10. I just felt like there was a little more meat in their bones in terms of the point that they were trying to make. Zero Dark 30 is ultimately about, as somebody put it, and I love to quote him on this, Chris Tapley of Variety put it this way. It's about the elusiveness of closure. And I feel like here there's just that thesis point missing, where we're just seeing it happen, and the only point I feel like it's trying to make is, wow, this was awful. And for me, I feel like that's not the only point to this story, and it didn't really explore the other avenues. I think it absolutely should have spent more time in the courtroom litigating this, drawing it out. Even if it was an even longer movie. I personally don't care about the lengths of movies, and I feel like we could have a 3.5 hour version of this, even if it would be kind of terrible. That would be a longer sit.
It would have been a great miniseries.
It would have been a great miniseries, and it's it just as is. It felt a bit hollow. I don't begrudge the choice. I know you love this movie. I know Chase loves this movie. I know it's a movie loved by people, and maybe I'll turn around on it. It is a little baffling that it got swallowed up by it didn't do well at the box office, but people love it. There are people who love it, I should say, and I just am as of right now not one of them.
Well, I mean, it's also
Joel, we respect your opinion, but not really. All right, so Mark, what were you
it's also real quick. Detroit is also about the elusiveness of closure too. It kind of is. I mean, that's the elusiveness of closure is the story of history.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I just felt like with Zero Dark 30, it explored it a little more in the character of the Jessica Chastain, whatever her name was. Not Molly Bloom. Whoever she was. Not Molly Bloom. I'll just say that. Like, capital N.
She started illegal poker games in Iraq. It's like, what?
And somehow caught Osama bin Laden that way. He came to one of the poker games. He was a stupid idiot. Whatever her name was. I actually don't think we learned her real name, but I can't remember what it was in the movie. But I just felt like it explored it more, through the filmmaking, through the storytelling. Certainly, I want them to go forward with more collaborations because they have worked wonderfully before. So I'll hand it over to Chase for his number 4.
Yeah, so you gentlemen have had your turn to do 3 of them, and now I will do 4 through 2, and then Mark, the beautiful Mark over there, will announce his number 1. He will go first in that category. But number 4, I mean, I have to do this because I feel like, Detroit is such a heavy subject matter that we have to lighten things up a bit. So, Mark, could you tell me a really bad knock-knock joke or just any joke in general?
What's green and has wheels?
I don't know.
Grass. I lied about the wheels.
What a funny story, Mark. So that is my number 4, The Disaster Artist. That was a beautiful segue, and I will take credit for all of that. Listen, The Disaster Artist, I think, is by far the funniest movie of the year. It is the one with most heart. Just like with Brigsby Bear, I actually felt they were both kind of similar. Definitely their plot.
Bring up The Disaster Artist.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's about someone trying to make a movie. But, Joel and I saw this together, and I told Joel this before we saw it. Like, I was really worried that Franco was, one, going to be a caricature, and two, our audience was going to be dumb and just laugh at everything that he was going to say without taking anything for credit. And believe it or not, after the first 10 minutes, yeah, they laughed because, he talks weird. But, like, after that, they actually paid attention. When there are certain scenes where, Tommy Wiseau, because that's who he plays, Tommy Wiseau, it's about the making of The Room. When he's playing Tommy, and he gets into these like kind of heartfelt scenes, especially like on the rooftop, and he starts to shed a little tear. It's like, people shut up. People actually paid attention because Franco was that commanding on screen as this alien character that we don't know much about. We don't know how old he is. We don't know where he's from. Where did he get all that money from? Like, is he part of the mafia? I have no clue. But that's the fun of that character, is the mystery.
And it's from the guy who played Alien in Spring Breakers.
Thank you for that little tidbit. Yes, which was a very odd character as well. No, but the Disaster Artist, I think it sums up perfectly what the writers are good at what they do. Whether be 500 Days of Summer or Spectacular Now or Fault in Our Stars, they always create these really grounded relationships, whether they be friends, romantic. And always have like a great sense of realism, but also very well written with dialogue. And I love these two writers so much. Ever since I saw 500 Days of Summer, and The Spectacular Now was one of my favorite, I think it was my favorite movie of 2013. And so I've always adored their writing style, and they do bring that to this movie. And then Franco just takes it, and of course he does direct it, and he directs it in such a very lighthearted but beautiful manner, but also having a lot of kind of heart and dramatic moments to it. And I just thought it was an all-encompassing film. It'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry. And I think, listen, I said this on our podcast, and I'll say it again. I absolutely hate nepotism down to my core, but I do think the casting of his brother Dave Franco was a smart choice, because since they were brothers in real life, they have that connection. So they do have that kind of friendly connection that him and Dave's character Greg have in the movie. I thought it worked out pretty well. And then this whole movie is it's stacked with cameos. So get ready for it. It's basically like watching a blockbuster comedy, but it's from A24. It's very strange. But you got like Seth Rogen, Paul Scheer, Josh Hutcherson makes an appearance in a really bad toupee. It's fun stuff. No, but like I just thought everything about it just worked. I felt for Tommy the whole time, even though he's kind of a sexist D-bag sometimes. He's still just a person trying to make a movie, and even though he made arguably one of the worst movies ever made, it's exactly how Greg says it at the very end of the movie. Listen, you made a movie that people enjoy. Not many people can say they've done that, which is true. Making a movie is hard, and people tend to forget that. And so just seeing what these two gentlemen went through, and going through this process, getting $10 million out of thin air somewhere to make this really horrid Lifetime movie, it's kind of impressive, and I give them all the respect in the world for just even creating it. But I can tell you, as a person that has, a film degree, I went to film school, it is hard to even just make a short film. I don't know how these two guys did it, but if Tommy did not have the money funneling in, they would have never made this, by the way. But they did, and now it's, in history as one of the worst ever made. And I think The Disaster Artist it's just a celebration of the characters and the movie itself, and it's a movie that takes care of the movie it's representing. Because, like I said, that was the one thing I was worried about, was James Franco was just going to go in there, do a caricature of Tommy. But first of all, he didn't do that. He brought a lot of heart and depth to it. But on top of all that, you can definitely tell that he read this book, The Disaster Artist, based on the making of The Room, and took care of the subject matter. He took care of it. He didn't really, drive it, into the ground and just make fun of it and point at it. It's like, no, he embraced it. He celebrated it. Even though Tommy is a questionable character, that's understandable. I still think he is that unlikely hero that you go to the movies and you root for, and you're like, damn it, Tommy, The Room looks awful, but complete your vision, sir. Now, I will say that the only complaint I had was I wish they would have showed definitely the post-production process, because I want to know how in the hell they went through the dubbing process of that movie. But other than that, I like the movie overall. I don't really have any major problems with it. But The Disaster Artist, thank you, Mark, for that funny story. That is my number 4. I will go to Joel first, because I don't I don't think this is on your list.
It's not. I had an enormous amount of fun with it, though. I love Franco's performance. Before a performance from last week that I'll mention in a second, he was my best actor choice. My personal, preference. Because it's a great performance. He captures, of course, the tics and quirks of Tommy Wiseau, but he also, like you said, he adds heart, depth, and all that. It's a little bit, it's weirdly similar to Ed Wood to the degree that I feel like they derived a little bit of the structure of the movie, but whatever. I mean, it's just so much fun and really, really funny. It feels like you said, it feels like a Rogen and Company movie. It just happens to have been distributed by A24. Again, A24 killing it. They've already made 2 of the movies on my list, and they've got a 3rd one coming up. So it's a really, really good movie. Mark, are you gonna pass or?
No, I'm not gonna pass. I like it.
Okay,
I enjoy it. Here we go again. So, kind of like with Brigsby Bear, where it's like, I feel like it didn't come to terms with the idea of psychological abuse. I don't think this one ever comes to terms with Tommy Wiseau. I don't. He's in the movie, he's kind of like a weird guy who's really driven and who happens to be kind of you call them a D-bag, but he gets into verbal abuse, and he's letting people dehydrate on set, and he's not. He doesn't seem like a great person in the movie by the end, and so I don't know how. I didn't see a friendship come out of the 2 of them by the end of the movie. I mean, I know it's there, but I'm like, after all of that they go through, and I know also, I think in real life they are, because I think they're working on another movie together soon.
Yeah, they have one coming out called Best Friends, I think.
Yeah, I did not get that.
Yeah, it's a weird title. It's also, I think, tongue in cheek because the R is set within parentheses.
So it's like the Herzog documentary.
Best Friends.
Yeah.
I feel like I understand what you're saying there. There is a whiff of it being a little too congratulatory of him.
Well, I hate The Room. I think it's a terrible movie. I don't.
Duh.
Yeah.
I mean, but the thing is, there are a lot of people. I mean, obviously, it has midnight screenings everywhere, and people are throwing spoons at the screen, and they're all laughing and having fun. And I'm like, I've seen The Room, and it's just terrible. I don't know what's funny about it. I don't, except that it's bad.
It's a gross movie. It's a gross movie.
Yeah,
The entire crux of the movie rests upon the psychotic quote unquote tragic hero who is who is abusive and creepy, and the woman trying to escape the relationship with a guy who actually treats her with respect is the villain of the movie, and it's definitely gross. There is that element. Obviously the unintentional comedies and the deliveries of lines and the audio mismatching and all that. But so I mean, as a movie itself, it's gross and regressive.
Yes, but in the Disaster Artist, seeing the behind the scenes stuff, I was laughing hysterically. Also, watching that, and
they put that in there perfectly, because I think it was Ben Mankiewicz who was saying on the Flick review, that if they had, because he had not heard of The Room, let alone seen it whenever they had the screening, he just it just never crossed his his doormat.
They were doing screenings of it right before the Disaster Artist came out. I know that we had invitations. I'm like, I'm gonna pass on that.
I would have too. I bought the DVD, but or I should say, a friend bought the DVD for me and just sent it to my house. But he was saying, if they had just kind of dropped some of the recreated scenes in the movie, it would have turned him off. He would not have been as positive on the movie because he would have been lost. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't have been able to see, what I mean is not the comparison scenes, but the recreations. Yeah. So they dropped the recreations next to the original scenes at the end of the movie. It's a brilliant coup, and it's a lot of fun.
They do a good job for people who haven't seen The Room. They do a good job of giving you a sense of what that movie is kind of like.
Yeah,
except
absolutely. And if you look at Ari Graynor matched up in the to the original to Juliette Danielle, I think is her name. It's perfect. It is absolutely uncanny. It's amazing. So my number 4, I'll go ahead and go to mine, is War for the Planet of the Apes. We just talked about this. Chase basically said everything that I would say. It's I honestly think it's one of the best blockbusters ever made. I kind of had to come to terms with that before I wrote my review, but I genuinely believe that that's true.
From a major studio.
And from a major studio, particularly, it's this brilliant. It's also bold. It's a really boldly, it's also audacious. It's got amazing, controlled chaos in the combat sequences. It's just really, really exciting and also tender. There's, you're thinking of the moment of the ape or the gorilla, I think, who hands the little girl the flower, and what happens right after that, and it's just really, really special in the world of summer blockbusters. You don't see movies like. I think it's going to stand up next to The Empire Strikes Back and The Dark Knight, and
that was a good 2 weeks for you. It came out right after Spider-Man.
Yeah. That's the other thing, is like it came out right after Spider-Man. Great couple of weeks there, and I saw a Ghost Story within that period of time too. So it was a great couple of weeks. I think that I was to the point where I was like, yeah, great movies need to stop coming out. And also Dunkirk came out right around then too. So I think the week after Apes. So I just love this movie. I've seen it 3 times now, and I could watch it again right now. It's there's dark elements to it. It goes to some places, but it also has that comic relief that with Bad Ape that doesn't feel like it's intruding. It feels completely organic to the rest of the movie, and because it's this absurd kind of apocalyptic world, and you just have that pop up. It's this funny character who still falls in line with the rest of the characters, and I just love this movie. The craftsmanship is like to die for. The cinematography, the score, the visual effects are basically the new benchmark, and it's just groundbreaking, I think, in terms of that particular aspect. And I love every second. I don't think it wastes a second. I think it is an amazing, amazing movie. So we'll just, since we've already talked about it on both of y'all's ends, we'll move it over to your number 4, Mark.
My number 4 is Terence Davies' A Quiet Passion, which is a biography of Emily Dickinson, the famous American poet. There's really not much that happens in Emily Dickinson's life, and it's obvious that Davies completely recognizes that, because there are a lot of just still shots, and when the camera moves, it's very subtle. You can barely perceive it until you notice, oh, hey, the camera's over there now. But it's so instead of just being about like the incidents and the events of Emily Dickinson's life, it's about the ideas that she wrote about and that she lived through, and that she had to experience being a woman writing poetry at a time when that wasn't really, people didn't expect that out of women, and they kind of shunned her for that in a way. They just wouldn't publish much, and she just kind of lived out her life, growing increasingly reclusive as she understands that her family is starting to do things that she didn't expect. Her friends start marrying while she remains single, because there's no man out there who can match what she expects out of someone, out of a lifelong companion. And and there's a lot of things about her belief in God, or her lack of belief in God. It's something that she wrestles with her entire life, and you never quite figure out exactly where she lands, except to know that she is going to do what she does and keep doing it, because if she were to live any other way, she would not be being true to herself. And not being true to yourself is, in her mind, worse than not believing in a higher power, because she knows for sure she exists. She's not so sure about a big guy upstairs. It is a great biography that just really focuses on those ideas and those concepts of faith and that wrestling with faith. And Cynthia Nixon plays Dickinson, and I don't know if it's the performance of the year, but it's at least number 2. I don't know. It's a fantastic performance, and I didn't know she had that in her because I haven't really seen her in much except those Sex and the City movies. I'm sure other stuff too, but this is the first time I've seen her tackle a role like this, and she is fantastic in it.
She was also in James White a couple of years ago, where she played the mother. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
she's fantastic in that. She was one of my supporting actress nominees in critics group stuff. That's right. Thank you.
There's also this great movie from the mid 2000s. I know that you've probably heard of it, Mark, but I don't know if you ever saw this. But Little Manhattan. Do you know about that one?
No, I know about it.
Okay, yeah, that's the one that topped Dustin Putman's list.
Yeah, and I know, and I've seen that around, and I have not gotten to it.
It is so good, and she's great. She plays his mother, and she's amazing in this movie. I reviewed this movie for Dallas movie screenings, in the midst of the Dallas International Film Festival. I didn't go to any screenings, but I watched it on Screener and reviewed it for them. And it's a special movie. It didn't make my top 10, but certainly at some point in the year, I was going, well, before another performance came out, I was going like constantly between her and Kristen Stewart in Personal Shopper as my best actress choice. Mm-hmm. It's decisively squelched on both ends by somebody else, but yeah, it's a great movie, and yeah, I totally, I knew this was coming because I know it's one of you got 5 4-star movies this year, but yeah,
you're gonna be able to figure it out pretty soon, I think, if you haven't already.
yeah, pretty much. Process of elimination.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved it for sure. I know Chase did not see it, correct?
No, I did not. But your review, Mark, I really loved it. The fact that there was a lack of sex in any city just kind of horrifies me. I wish there was more sex in the city in that movie, but if there's not, whatever. No, but that was one of those ones I missed because that's what Joel and I did during the festival. I did the in-theater movies, he did the screener movies, so that's pretty much where we parted ways. But we're gonna for this coming year, we're gonna try to do all of them together. So, but yeah, he got the privilege to watch that on screener. I have not yet, but
cool. Do you want to guess what streaming platform it's on?
I'm gonna guess Amazon Prime again.
Yes, correct.
Alrighty then. So I got 3 movies to watch.
An Amazon Prime commercial. There's so many movies that happen to show up on there.
So this show is sponsored by Amazon Prime. Yeah, Hulu and Netflix. You can go suck it. All right. So, sorry, that was a little crude because I have all 3 of them. All right. So my number 3 is a film I saw. What was that? A few weeks ago. And so Joel knows where I'm going with this as soon as I say this, but I had never seen the other director's previous works. This was the first one I had seen out of the 3. I have heard the first one is the classic. I've heard a lot of people like the second one, and so this was my first ever Martin McDonagh film, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and that is my number 3.
Hey, guess what?
Is it?
It's my number 3 too.
Oh yeah, that's right. So I can't believe we've actually had a lot more in common. You know what? Maybe we can be friends, Mark. No. So 3 Billboards. I'm gonna go ahead and say a bastardized version of this review, and I'm sure Mark will have something more, eloquently and way more smart than what I'm about to say. But what I gathered from this, because this is, like I said, my first ever experience from this director. I'm sure Mark is on the other end. I'm sure he has seen the other 2, so I'm excited to hear his perspective on it since he knows this director. But since this was my first introduction to him as a writer-director combo, I was kind of blown away. Because, as you can tell from like Brigsby Bear and The Disaster Artist and all these weirdo like comedy movies that I put on my list, I love me a good comedy. And the fact that this tackles dark comedy on that thin line, it tackles social relevancy, and touches upon a lot of themes like racism and police brutality, and just everything all along those lines. It's kind of incredible how he was able to mix the 2 and have this breathing world of characters in this small little town that's just going through this situation and taken to such dark routes and really question, police presence and, question a lot of things that are wrong in our society, but also do this kind of tongue-in-cheek element where, you throw in some kind of humorous lines while you're at it. And I just thought it was a good blend. It almost reminded me of just watching real life, these real life characters with this scenario that happens to this town, and all of them have to tackle it head on, whether you be Frances McDormand as the mom trying to get answers from the chief of police, played by Woody Harrelson, and, the killing and raping of her daughter. It's like, they go to those dark places, but they handle it with such care that it's not, gross or, obtrusive. It's just, it fits within the story and the characters, and I just found it really compelling because it's a sharply written script. Like I said, first time I ever introduced to this guy, and I love, like I said, the kind of small town world building and the characters. They just all feel like real people. I also think it has some of the best performances of the year with Frances McDormand, and probably my favorite character arc and performance from a supporting actor with Sam Rockwell. Good God. Like, because when the movie starts, like, he's a racist a-hole, and you're like, well, this is going to be fun to watch. And so as the movie keeps going, he starts to grow a little bit, and you're like, wow, that was actually handled in a smart manner, because he could have easily been this Looney Tunes racist going throughout the town, inward this, and, oh, look at that, Mexican over there. It's like, oh, he could be really annoying really fast, but there's something that happens. And the fact that there's a certain character that kind of gets to the core of who he is like that, it made sense for the movie, made sense for the character. I just thought it was such a well-written scene, and as the movie progresses, you start to kind of like him a little bit. And I was just like, wow, I was vastly impressed by his writing skills, whether, like I said, whether it be with characters or dialogue or just overall atmosphere. He knows how to write a relatable movie with, social relevancy, but also with like this stinky punch of humor. Like, it's just, I thought it was such a great blend. And Joel and I agree when we reviewed this, or when he reviewed it, I agree with him. It was, yes, the last 5 minutes seem kind of out of place for the entire like movie in general, but that doesn't excuse the fact that the rest of the movie is just flat out amazing. I had such a great time watching it. I did this in The Shape of Water in the same day, so it was a great day for movies indeed. But I absolutely love this one, and yes, I will check out In Bruges now. And yes, I will check out Seven Psychopaths, which, yes, Mark, it is on Amazon Prime. Because it is on my list. It is. Exactly. It is on my list. I will check it out. So, Mark, I'll carry it over to you. I probably sounded like a second grader trying to describe something. So, can you please put it into more of a professional wording as to why this movie is great? Because I felt like I was rambling on a little bit. So, what do you got for us?
No pressure. No, I McDonough, I liked In Bruges. I really like Seven Psychopaths. That Seven Psychopaths plays like a Shaggy Dog story of just all this crazy stuff of like happening for no reason. I just really enjoyed it, but he keeps getting better in my mind. And so like Three Billboards, yeah, it's fantastic, and it's, for me, it's all about anger and just how angry Frances McDormand's character is at the police and just everybody for everything being passed by, and the murder of her daughter. Sam Rockwell's character is angry because he can't do pretty much anything. He's a terrible cop. His mother is always writing him, and I'll get into the mother character later because it's really important, and I love the way McDonough does these little tiny scenes to kind of reveal more about the characters. There's John Hawkes shows up as Dorman's ex-husband, and he's angry at her because of all the stuff that happens. Lucas Hedges plays her son. He's angry because she puts up these 3 billboards and it keeps reminding her of everything. So all these people are angry, and it's all about, the film is entirely just about trying to figure out if that anger is justified, if it's not justified. If it is justified, how do you reconcile that with the rest of the world? If it's unjustified, where did it come from? And that's like the key scene, I think, with the Rockwell character, is that he has this scene with his mother after some stuff has happened at work, and she says just one thing about the way things used to be in the past. And you can, in that one moment, you can sense all the other times of him growing up with this woman, her saying stuff like that and putting that stuff in his mind. And it kind of just really quickly explains how he got to this point where he's being accused of torturing African Americans. And you can see it happen just really quickly. Yeah, it's fantastically written. I know a lot of people say that none of the dialogue is realistic, but I mean, like, that's kind of the point. I mean, I hope they never ever see a David Mamet play, because I mean, there's a hyper stylized sense to his writing, and it's been through all of his movies where, you know, people just seem to talk in a certain way, and it sounds, at least to me, it sounds somewhat right to that you know, that region, this fictional town in Missouri.
It's the environment that you said so.
Yeah, exactly. It's, you know, I mean, it makes sense to me. There are just so many little moments where you learn more about these characters. There's that great scene, the interrogation room scene between Woody Harrelson and McDormand, and there's something that happens because Harrelson's character is ill. There's something that happens where he ends up showing a very clear sign of his illness, and she instantly, on a dime, turns from being angry and sarcastic and caustic to becoming almost, you know, maternal towards him, like on a dime. And you could just, seeing that one moment, these characters reveal themselves to have all this depth, and you don't really see it at the beginning, but he just keeps showing us all of it, and I loved it. And I know we'll talk about the ending. I'm trying to remember what the other film was. We talked about it earlier too. Oh, Lady Bird. It was another, for me, I saw Lady Bird in relatively close approximation to each other, and it's an unexpected ending, but it feels perfect for what it is. It's just this moment of, like, yeah, these two characters who have been opposed to each other, and it's just like, yeah, they're in it together now, whatever it is. It's great. I loved it, obviously.
On that level, I did appreciate it. For me, I felt like, I'm not going to get into spoilers or anything, of course, because it's a pretty amazing moment. But for me, I felt like the choice that it gives those two characters felt a little bit, not false, a little shortchanged. For me, I felt like any sort of decision they made would have been a bit of a simpler view of their humanity, and that was after, you know, 2 hours of showing us a lot more complex humanity, and so I felt like it was a little bit, I don't know, I don't know, I feel like they could have maybe excised the very last scene.
I think I think I know what you're talking. I think I understand what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't want to get into spoilers either, but you're talking about the choice that the two characters are thinking of.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. The fact that the movie gives them that choice to choose from, if you will.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
I didn't see it as a literal choice. I saw it more as just, this is the moment. I don't know what's going to happen after it, but I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think. Yeah, I don't want to. It's hard to talk about.
Yeah.
But
you don't
I didn't
think
see
that
it as an actual choice that they're going to have to make
do,
along the way and after the movie ends. I just saw it as, like,
for me it wasn't about the ultimate decision. You know, whether or not they whatever decision they make. I think it was the fact that the movie had them in a position where they were going to possibly make that.
Yeah,
it just felt a little simpler, but and that's why it's not on my top 10. I love the movie. I think that. Yeah. Sam Rockwell's performance is the best supporting performance of the year, just from anybody.
I think he's a lead, but
right, whatever. One of the best performances of the year, in any case, probably second in line for me.
See, I just really I saw that last scene not as an actual plan, but just kind of more of an excuse for those two characters. Okay. That's the way I saw it.
Okay,
but yeah,
totally get that. So my number 3. Is The Shape of Water.
I knew we'd be talking about this.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
this movie, I mean, talk about bold and audacious filmmaking. The last 3 movies on my list, whatever I'm trying to say, could easily be the top 3 in any given year, like in any order, honestly. And then there are still 2 movies. But this movie I love this movie. And something that Chase and I reviewed it last week and on the podcast, and something that we both feel is that none of this movie should work.
No.
Like,
at all.
By any logical means, none of this should work. Because here is a movie about a romance between a mute woman and a fish man who it's an allegory for a queer romance. Those always can, topple over, especially if they're not an actual queer romance. It's an allegory. And then also it's a Cold War thriller.
Yep.
It's extremely violent sometimes. It's an allegory for acceptance. And for one scene that I won't give away, it's a musical. So none of this should work as well as it does, and yet all of it works. And I don't even want to go into the plot, but really, Sally Hawkins plays the woman, Eliza, who, has to sign everything. She can't communicate as well as everybody else around her, and she knows that. It weighs on her. And now she's met this creature who can communicate verbally as much as she can. And she feels like that puts them both on the same level. And they fall in love, and it's sweet, and it isn't creepy. I know that people are probably going to avoid this because of the idea of the romance, but of course that's the test of the movie. Will you find this creepy? And if you do, then you fail the test without even seeing the movie.
But yet you'll accept Beauty and the Beast.
But yet you'll accept Beauty and the Beast somehow. I guess Disney is an exception. Now, of course, this movie is Disney because it's Fox. But in any case, I loved every second. I think that Michael Shannon, speaking of Sam Rockwell and sort of this role as a kind of villain of a movie, here we get one that's a bit clearer villain, but there's still understandable, conceivable, motivations going on there that he's not just a paper thin. Yeah. He's not, the guy from Meet the Robinsons with the mustache. He's and I totally forgot the name. But I love it. Sally Hawkins, Doug Jones, again, both beating Roy Moore and also being in this movie. Sorry, I can't believe nobody's ever talked about that. But yeah, we're beating up on Roy Moore, and it's awesome. I just love every second of this movie. Michael Stuhlbarg shows up in this movie as a character I didn't expect.
This whole year
it's been quite a year for him. 3 movies in like a month. It's just, and I might be talking about him here in a second, in another one. So it's amazing. I called it pure magic on Facebook. I part of a film group, and I log every movie like I'm now watching this or whatever. And whenever I got out of it, I said pure magic. I was into every second of this movie. I want to see it again right now. It's one that flies by. It's got it's got the best cinematography of the year, I think. Certainly some contenders for that this year, with Dunkirk and A Ghost Story and all that. But this, I feel, boasts the year's best cinematography, and I just love the entire package. It is a delight. It's sometimes not delightful because there's some dark stuff, but the whole movie as a whole is a delight to watch, and that's my number 3 is The Shape of Water.
Yeah, I find it interesting because Mark and I put in our honorable mentions, and you have it so high up there. Because when you and I talked about it, I gave it a high grade, but once again, we had to give away our children. It's well, I kind of love you, but I love this one more. So yeah, great pick. It's a great adult fairy tale that basically blends every single genre known to man, and it should never work, but it does. Just like with Octavia Spencer in the movie, how do you two do the... and then she has to describe it. It's that's how I feel watching the movie. It's yeah, this should never work. All right, so here it is, gentlemen. Getting into our top 2. Now, what I'm about to say is my second one. Joel will automatically know my number 1. And it's going to shock him. And Mark has no idea which way I'm going, which is great.
No idea.
Because that's the beauty of it. Joel already knows me, so he already knows what's going to be on there. But my number 2. I saw it recently, and when I got out of it, I immediately said it's a perfect film from top to bottom, and I firmly believe that. Now here's where I had the issue, not with the movie, but with deciding what was going to be number one and number two. And I will do my best to explain why my number one is my number one. But for my number two, I'm going to go with Call Me By Your Name. I saw this a few days ago. I saw it the same day as I, Tonya. It was a great little double feature. But with this one, I knew it was going to be good. Like, because you hear all these great things from festival circuits, you're like, oh, wow, I'm going to be in for a treat. It's going to be one of these, nice little indie romance films that's just going to strike me in the right way possible, and it does that. Whether you want to talk about the impeccable direction to where every scene never feels wasted, it feels like an airtight movie, whether you want to talk about the script or the editing, the cinematography is gorgeous. It feels like this Italian postcard throughout the entire movie. Like, you want to go live there. It just feels so... Just so inviting to go hang out with, Elio and Oliver, right?
Yeah.
Oliver, yeah. So it was so inviting to just kind of watch these characters go throughout these environments, and it was just such a gorgeous scenery and just gorgeously framed movie. Whether you want to talk about the acting and how these characters are people that you can relate to with your first love, or, be in Michael Stuhlbarg's shoes and be that parent that supports their kid in their first love and gives them a really harsh life lesson, but it's also really poignant to their future. You want to talk about the music that has like this very a European feel to it. It feels old school. It feels like we're watching a movie from the 50s or 60s. It's just gorgeous with the music. But I gotta tell you, I was watching the whole movie, right? And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is an amazing movie. The performances are great. The direction is exact. It just feels like this precision of a movie, like nothing is wasted. But I gotta tell you, when Joel was hyping up that last shot, I had no idea what I was in for. But that might be one of my favorite shots I've seen in this whole decade, because what that last shot represented was the whole culmination of the movie. It was done in such an artistic way, and it was powered through a great performance by Timothée Chalamet, that I almost forgot the movie I watched, because that scene was so powerful that I was kind of awestruck, and with the credits rolling over it, that was actually a bold move right there to keep the credits rolling over that shot. But just to kind of lightly describe the shot to you without spoiling anything, is we have Timothée Chalamet's character, and he's staring into something. And it's framed in a way to where something behind him is very prevalent, and it's very noticeable. To where what's happening in the background is a kind of afterthought to him at this point. And what's in front of him highlights his future going forward, and yes, it will hurt, but it's necessary. And I thought that was just a great, culmination of his character, him growing up, him, going through these, memories with Oliver, but ultimately having to move on, and try to get past this pain, even though it's going to hurt and sting him. And I just thought it was just absolutely just a stunning shot to just cap the end of that film. It was just absolutely wonderful. And I also like the fact that it was set in the 80s during the AIDS crisis, and it pretty much forced people that were gay, that didn't feel like they were being accepted by society, so they had to marry women just to make sure they didn't piss off the people in their family, and people that characters were going through that in the movie. And it's absolutely heartbreaking, because their heart is not in the right place, and it's really tragic to see. But I'm glad that people like Michael Stuhlbarg's character, who teach his son to be you. Do not change for anyone. You need to be you going forward. Yes, first loves are terrible, but you will learn from them, and people like you and Oliver, have a rare thing. So just keep it. It was a wonderful monologue to just once again kind of cap off at the end of the film. It is a perfect romance. Call Me By Your Name, number 2, and as Joel pointed out, it's the second film with your name in the title.
It is, and it's also my number 2, by the way. This movie is pretty much perfect. This is weird because I've been kind of admiring of Luca Guadagnino, who is the director up until this point. I wasn't a fan of I Am Love, and I kind of liked A Bigger Splash, but I wasn't as taken by it as a lot of critics were last year. Mostly by the performances, and that was about it. But here, he's working with a screenplay by James Ivory, who's a legend. This guy did Howard's Inn, Remains of the Day. He's part of the Merchant Ivory group or duet, whatever duo, as well as Esmail Merchant. And so you have this sense of unhurried leisure in the pacing that it's 132 minutes. And I guess, in some twisted world, you could argue that this doesn't need to be 132 minutes because it's a very simple movie, but it allows you to take the time to consider everything about the story, about these characters, about every single shot, shot with precision by a cinematographer. And I actually don't know the gender of this person. I haven't looked it up, but Sayambu Mukdiprom, whoever that is, they're going places because this has some of the best cinematography of the year. And you're so right. I mean, Timothée Chalamet's performance is, and that's how you say it, by the way, they rhyme. Timothée Chalamet, his performance is my best actor choice. I mentioned that James Franco was until last week, and this is why. He's a revelation here. He's had a good year with a movie that I'll mention in a couple minutes, and also wonder what it is. And then this one, it's a great year. His agent needs to keep him in these interesting roles, and here it's just this really, really complex role of a young boy who is growing to be a man and falls for a man who is already a man, and that man understands things about the heart that he does not yet, and he tries to teach him, but he also falls for him, and it's a two-way road here. It's a semi-tragic romance in some ways, and very reminiscent of Brokeback Mountain in some ways. Different ending, but certainly in that vein. It's coming of age like Moonlight. It's certainly up there in that category, and it's a perfect movie. I know that Mark does not think it's perfect, so I'll perfect in that way. So I'll move it over to him to find out why he's literally the one critic in the entire world who does not have this on his top 10.
I am not. I'm not the only one.
I just wanted to put you in the spotlight. That's all.
No, it's funny because somebody actually came at me with on Facebook today to ask, why isn't this even in the running for your top 10? And I'm like, oh boy. So I had to quickly figure it out, and I'll say the same thing. I had a big issue with the central relationship, and I kept it from hitting me on an emotional level. I don't know what else to say. I mean, there's a lot to say about it, but I mean, the biggest thing is Armie Hammer is completely miscast from my point of view. He is great in the movie, but he is, in terms of his age, he's much older than Timothée Chalamet by I think more than a decade.
Yeah.
And
He's in his mid-30s, I believe, and
I think in the book the character is supposed to be 24.
Yeah.
And in the movie he suggests at one point that he's a doctoral student, which would put him up to be a little bit older, which would match Hammer's, age and physicality. And then there is Armie Hammer is a big guy. He's kind of like somewhat of a movie star. And Timothée Chalamet
sort
is
of the stars of the 50s, I think, with his jawline and smile.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Timothée Chalamet looks like a teenager. He looks 17, even though he's a couple of years older than that. So Hammer's great. Chalamet you're right. He's fantastic in this. I don't know what else he's done other than the stuff this year.
He was in a movie that you loved from a couple years ago. You reviewed this for McGill's, I believe, and it was Love the Coopers. I know that he was part of the ensemble. I know he hates this movie. Okay.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I know. He was part of the ensemble. It wasn't a very big role. He's pretty much like this year's been the culmination of everything he's done. He's also in Hostiles, So
Yes, I know that. Yeah, I saw that, and I recognized him in that obviously now. But yeah, and I I was really into the movie when the idea of the relationship was was an idea, when it was like this kind of unspoken thing between the two of them that they can't really say it. Like there's that great scene at the fountain where they are clear to each other. They are clearly talking about the fact that they're attracted to each other, but they never
and they
use
can't.
any of the
Yeah,
language to do that, to say it, because they can't say it. Um, yeah, well, they're in public, and also there is. I mean, Hammer's character Oliver, he specifically says like that he can't do it because he's going to be good. There's a suggestion from the character that he knows that something about the two of them, either because he's only there briefly or because of the age difference or whatever, that there's something that would hinder him from doing that. Anyway, the point is, the movie does try to get this relationship to hit you on an emotional level. It just didn't for me, and it was the obstacle that Hammer is older. He's physically stronger. He's physically bigger. It felt if the balance of that relationship felt off to me in a way that I could not reconcile in terms of like having that touch me in a way. And also, I don't think Hammer's character really knows what he's doing, which makes it interesting on an intellectual level, but again, not really an emotional level.
he is playing sort of somebody who feels like he's trying to be an intellectual elite. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
he corrects Michael Stuhlbarg's character early on. You know, with
Yeah.
the whatever it was about. It was something about sculptures, because that's what the
Yeah.
Stuhlbarg
It was
character teaches.
Yeah, it was there's stuff, there's a couple of moments where he like Stillbarg's character tests him or where he corrects him. Yeah, but I mean, he's when he's dancing, it's like there's nobody else there. There are two scenes
Oh man,
where
I
Oliver
love
dances
that.
to the same song, and it's
Yeah,
I feel like that's the point, is that the character is not emotionally there. And whereas opposed to Elio, he is closer to that than Oliver. It's like I said, I'm watching that unfold as an intellectual exercise. Like, yes, I can understand this and the conflict between them and why they are kind of like perfect for each other and also completely wrong for each other at the same time. I get it, but it didn't hit me the way that it seemed to get a lot of people. So I don't.
certainly if audiences who have seen this were a little bit underwhelmed by, like you said, the sensual part of the relationship, the physical, see beats per minute, because that certainly confronts this a lot more. But it's I felt like this is sort of Guadagnino's territory, where he kind of it remains at a distance, and that's exactly what turned me off of I Am Love, and I know that you felt the same way about that.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, is just very detached, even though it's visually beautiful. Here, I felt like the two pieces fit together. I just love every inch of this. But,
that's fine. I mean, I get it. I could see it. I could see how it could how it would be affecting, but it wasn't for me. So
fair enough.
Yeah,
so
and I watched it the second time just to make sure, like I didn't miss something. And I'm like, nope, I didn't.
I knew you mentioned that you were gonna try to see it again to me.
Yeah.
So what is your number two?
My number two is a movie about time. I wrote that in my review, and I didn't realize it was the tagline for the movie. I think the tagline was "It's all about time," and I mentioned that I didn't realize that was the tagline, or it was subconscious or whatever. But it's a ghost story. Oh, I love talking about this film because nobody really has seen it except people who are really interested in film, and so it's a challenge to talk about if you haven't, for people who haven't seen it, to make it sound like something they might want to see, and also to kind of give them a heads up, like it's not like both of you said, it's not like anything else.
There are people who rent it at work, and I even though I immediately go to, oh man, this is great, I live in Texas, and I'm sorry, but it's just not an art house state, so I just feel like, oh man, okay, well,
It was shot in Texas,
Hopefully
right?
they maybe did a little bit of research into like reviews to get a sense of this.
Yeah, it was shot in Texas.
It was
Yeah,
shot
it
in
was shot in
Texas. Okay,
Texas,
that's
yeah.
yeah.
I
So
believe right outside Dallas. So yeah.
yeah, so I it's so fascinating, just the rhythm of the thing. Like it starts off really slow. Like I mean, I like movies that take their time. Even this one for me, like at like the first like half hour, it was like a challenge. Like I was sitting there noticing like this shot's going on a long time and there is nothing happening. Like the reveal of the ghost, it's just
Yeah.
a it's just a still shot of a gurney with a sheet over it for like minutes. Everybody talks about the pie eating scene, but there's something going on there. But there's like minutes of just staring at a gurney. And I'm like, I really was thinking, what is going on here? I know what's going to happen. Why doesn't it just happen already? And at a certain point, I realized that is what Lowery is doing. He is using the film as a way to get you to just sit there and think about everything that he's putting forward with it. So there are moments where nothing happens on screen, or Rooney Mara eats a pie out of the dish for 5 minutes, and I really think that Lowery wants you to be thinking, why am I watching this? What is the point of this? What else could I be doing with my time?
Which he basically comments on by you were telling me this, and I noticed it when I watched it again on Blu-ray. They cut the chapter. One of the chapters begins in the middle of that. Like she gets the pie, and then sits down, and the camera cuts, and the cut is the beginning of the next chapter. So the people who hate the scene have to see it. And I love
so like
that.
even if you tried skipping it, because you know it's coming. If you tried skipping it, you cannot escape
and there
the pie.
are purists out there who won't fast forward. So if they go to the next scene, I mean, they just go to the scene.
Yeah,
so.
but why would you fast forward it? Like I said, I think Lowery is intentionally using that rhythm and to get you to start thinking about the implications of the concept of this afterlife, of just having to sit there and stand there and watch the world go on without you, and that's terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, there are times where, like, oh man, it's not even in the last bit, although a lot of it is, but not even in the last bit when it's just the aftermath, but it's right after it feels like she's finished that first stage of grieving and she goes out and meets someone.
Yeah.
And then she brings them back, and there's that nervousness on her part. You know, we don't know how long it is because this is a movie that doesn't.
Yeah, we don't.
We don't know. Yeah. It's probably a few weeks, maybe a year. I don't know. But we don't see his face because all we see is the ghost face. But the ghost face killer, no, no. But the ghost's face, but we can imagine like the pain that's probably on the human face in life.
And after a while, like you start to wonder, does he even feel anything anymore?
Right.
If he's capable of feeling it, can he feel it anymore? And that's why I love the rhythm is not just those long shots, but it's also how, as it progresses, the cuts get faster, things actually start happening, like significant things, like just moving forward into the future, having other people come into the house. There's, what we talked about, the philosopher scene. I don't think that sums up the movie's idea, like a final stance on everything, but I think it's there to at least give you some bearings about what's happening. And I think it's a great scene. I think it fits in just right, because there does come a point where you're like, what is the point of all this? And that character at least gives you an idea of like, here are some things you could be thinking about right now while you watch this. And just every new step just kept me riveted. Like I just was wondering, like, where is this going to go? Because I had no clue because I thought it was going to be just about grief and grieving and, being trapped and lonely and isolated. And it just starts going to places I did not expect. Like you said, it left turns, right turns. It's in all the cars making U-turns. It does. It is so inventive. It's so meticulously crafted. I loved it. probably any other years would have been my number one just because it is so different. And I love seeing stuff that's different, that makes me think, and that does affect me in a way. Like I can't talk about, the film without like just kind of briefly thinking about all the stuff that it brings up. And I mean, that's a sign of a great film, if anything. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. All right, so we are down to it. Mark, what is your number one film of the year?
My number one film of the year is Sean Baker's The Florida Project. I adore this film. It is so innocent, and it's so joyous, and it's also so depressing, and it's so accurate and apathetic towards people in poverty, and just the sense of being a child. I mean, it's the entire thing is from the perspective of the Princess character Mooney, and so just it just follows her with her friends, and it's just like that psychology of being a kid where you just want to play with anybody, with everything, and just go out exploring and looking for new things and going to your favorite spots. There's that moment where she I knew I was in for something, and I was wondering what people would be thinking about the movie when her and her friends go up onto the balcony and start spitting on a car. I'm like, these kids are kind of brats, but can you blame them? Can you blame them? They're kids, and also it's like they're living out of a motel. I mean, what else are they gonna do? They don't have any place to go play except outside, and what are you gonna do? And she spits on the car, and then the person whose car it was, they're yelling at her, you gotta clean it. And she's cleaning the car, and the woman's granddaughter comes over, and because that's what kids think, it's like I want to help. And as soon as she's asked, can I help, and Mooney says yes, they become lifelong friends, it seems like. Except for stuff that happens later on. But you could see like those two are going to be best friends now, because that's the way kids are. It's just like that little thing in common of just wanting to clean a car or making a game of it is enough to connect them. She's just fantastic. Yeah, it's that last scene that she has that it broke me. It broke me. And we can talk about that ending as divisive as much as we want, but I needed that ending.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I would have been a sobbing wreck on the floor of the theater if it had followed through.
A lot of people have a problem with the fact that it's presented as a relief. I think that there was now I haven't seen the movie that this is referring to, but I know its reputation. But there's a person on Facebook who does not like the ending and thinks that it ruins the movie and that it's a radio flyer ending, and which is interesting. I know there's a reputation there. I haven't seen the movie, so I'm not sure what that's referring to be honest. But it's divisive, and it's a relief for us and for the characters, and
but the thing is that it's a relief just that you don't see it, but it doesn't break the reality of everything.
We know exactly what's happening.
We know exactly what's going to happen. Yeah, we know exactly what happens, even though we don't see it. We know
that Baker shifts like camera styles to. He goes back to Tangerine basically with
he
that
does,
scene. I think he actually shot it with an iPhone. It's hyper stylized, and it also enters Disney World. So,
which, as we know, they don't like filming.
they don't like filming. We won't. By the way, saying where it goes into isn't a huge spoiler. It's the context.
No, it's not.
Is completely. If you don't know what we're talking about, you will still find this amazing to watch. But they don't like filming in there. There was an entire movie made about it. It's called Escape from Tomorrow.
It's bad, but
but it was an entire movie about how they couldn't do that, so they had to secretly film.
There's also that one scene in Exit Through the Gift Shop where Banksy went into Disneyland, I think, with the camera.
Love that scene and that movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a joy. I mean, it really understands the innocence of childhood and just that that desire to just play no matter what the circumstances are. It's a really spot on, I think, depiction of living in poverty without making it seem romantic or cheapening it. It just seems natural. And yeah, all the performances are fantastic. Willem Dafoe is like one of the few professional actors in it. And
yeah, I think there's him. Macon Blair shows up briefly.
Yes.
And then Caleb Landry Jones is, I assume, his
son. And that's like about it. And everybody else
pretty
was
much.
Amateurs.
Willem Dafoe mentioned that there were 3 exceptions other than him, and I have to think that it's possibly the pedophile, but because otherwise I don't know how they did that. But because if that was a non-actor,
that would. Oh, man.
But there was also
it's just weird to me that Roy Moore was in Florida for some reason.
Oh boy!
But yeah, there are a lot of scenes like all the stuff with Bria Vinate. You said the name right. Bria Vinate's character doing the selling the off-brand perfumes like in front of big hotels, and that feels like Baker just like got the two of them to go try to sell perfume
I think
for
he might
real.
have just set the camera down. I feel like that's the actual like security guard.
Yeah. I feel like that turns it into a documentary at that point, and it's like, but there's that mixture, like it's all a story, but it feels so real.
There's also a couple of adult film performers in there. Ashley, I think that's her name, Haley's friend. She's played by a porn star, and I believe the old lady as well, sitting out on the Who Wants to Show a Lot. I believe that those are adult film performers, and he did the same thing with Tangerine. He matched up professional actors with non-actors with adult film actors, and to create this kind of tapestry that's not exact reality, and people I don't think should judge it against exact reality. And that's the thing about the backlash, is that it's the nonsense that it's so apologetic toward Haley.
Ridiculous. I don't understand apologetic.
I know
like, it lets her off.
It lets her off for stuff that they're like, she's a terrible mother, and obviously elements of her parenting are awful, but
that's kind of the point.
That's exactly the point, and they don't, and it's an inability to process that.
Yeah,
and it's utterly fascinating. It's not really among like film critics, but there are film groups of people like discussing this movie who have already piled on the ending, and now they're piling on the treatment of the character, and the fact that the movie is from the child's perspective is completely lost on them, I guess. So even though it breaks from that, it's always still through the veneer of sort of this fantasy reality kind of.
Which is great because it's literally down the road from Disney World, a fantasy place.
And it's right there at the edge of the American dream, and it's the American nightmare basically, pretty much. And it's amazing. So I'm gonna go on to my number one. Nobody knows what this is; it's a complete mystery. But I'm moving from A24 to A24. They ruled the year again. They ruled it last year with Moonlight. They ruled it in 2014 with Under the Skin. And this year they made Lady Bird, and they broke my heart and also put it back together again and made me like joyous and move along at the exact rhythms of the characters. It's a movie that, Gene Siskel basically once said that he picked the movies that traverse the entirety of the emotional range of like the emotional spectrum, and this does that for me. It's a movie that has comedy in some of the quirks and the broad strokes, and then it recognizes the gravity of the dramatic stuff within those notes of high school teen life as you transition out of that. And I also want to quote somebody else, Jackson, last year, our Chase's regular co-host in the top 10 episodes. Last year, whenever he had Moonlight on his list, he saw it kind of a couple months before the year ended, and he said, as soon as I saw it, I knew it was mathematically impossible for me to see a better movie this year. And for me, that's how I felt, and that's how I felt about this one. It's just, I saw it, I knew this is the best movie of the year. It's the best performance of the year from Saoirse Ronan. I I feel like anybody who claims otherwise about any other performances is in denial. There's no performance better than this one. I honestly think that this is somewhere near the top of the decade, if not at the top. It's that close, and everything about this movie works from Ronan's performance, which is tremendous. She's able to take a character who Gerwig would have played in a Noah Baumbach movie had this been one. I think, and certainly it could have been one in some universe of Greta Gerwig playing the role and having co-written the screenplay with Noah Baumbach. But instead she takes it on herself. It's obviously a semi-autobiographical story. And, she and Ronan plays the role with just enough quirk to be funny and weird and like a teenage girl, or like this teenage girl would be, but she doesn't play it as a joke. It's not a jokey performance. It's a sincere performance, and it's amazing from beginning to end, from the opening scene to that closing phone call. And speaking of which, there are little connections throughout the years in these movies, and my number 1 and 2 both climax on an important phone call during which the character finds out some revelation, and I find that that's very interesting. And this one is just it's perfect from beginning to end. Laurie Metcalf and Tracy Letts are just heartbreaking. They're parents who deal with their daughter in different ways, and she makes a couple of boyfriends. Both are kind of disappointing in different ways, a little bit. But both receive their due. They're both sympathetic characters as well. And then she has these two best friends. One's played by Beanie Feldstein, who, by the way, I did not know this, is Jonah Hill's sister.
Yeah, get on that train.
I had
we did
no
this
idea.
5 years ago.
I had no idea. But in any case, she's great in this. And, she was in Neighbors 2. And now she's in this. She needs to be in every movie. And then Odia Rush, who, I think I've seen her in one or two things. But for the most part, I haven't really noticed her in anything. I think she was a Disney star at some point, but not sure about that. In any case, they're both great as these friends who have different philosophies and different sort of applications within Christine within Lady Bird's life, and it's just amazing. I was dazzled and completely into this movie. Like, I saw it with a guy, I can't remember his name. I hope he's listening, because he was familiar with at least Dallas movie screenings, and I'm hoping that I told him about the show, and I'm hoping that he's listening right now. But in any case, we were both on the same wavelength. It's just a beautiful, beautiful movie. I can't wait to own the Blu-ray. And everything about this movie works. I can't believe that Mark and Chase hated this movie so much. It's just
even though it's on our list, by the way,
it's not number one. It means you hated it.
It's like 9 out of like the 320 something
like,
or more movies I saw.
It's sort of like how Mark hated Moonlight last year and had it at number 3. Just, I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Ooh, I might have to pick a bone about that one. So
no, I'm just kidding. It just knocks every single element out of the park. I could not find a wrong step taken. This is the movie of the year, and yeah. So my number 1, The Bye Bye Man, the Lady Bird.
So basically, what I got out of that review is that I should definitely hide my Lady Bird screener behind him right now, because he's going to steal it on the way out. All right, so my number 1, I'm going to shock the world when I tell you my choice, but let me ramp it up, Chase style, because Joel knows that I love to do that. And Mark has no idea where I'm going with this, so I'm going to try to keep it as vague as possible, so it just absolutely just drops a bombshell on him. All right. My number 1. I will say that there is like an emotional nostalgia investment into it, so I will say that up front, that was maybe 5% of the overall thoughts about this movie. When I saw it this year, I knew that it was going to be a top 5 contender. But I had no idea when I put it at number 1, it would stay at number 1 for the longest time. When I saw it, I thought it broke new grounds within the genre it was trying to do. I thought it changed the game in terms of that genre, and I think it did it for the better. I also think that change for the genre attributed to the character in the best way possible. I also thought it was one of the best finales for any character that I have seen in this genre. I do believe it has changed the game for this genre. I saw this movie on February 18th, almost a year ago. When I got out of it, I had to see it immediately again. I saw it 2 weeks later. And just like with Mark, I've seen it 3 times now. And I'm about to give away my choice without even saying it. But the third time I saw the black and white version. And I can tell you right now that Logan has still stayed as my number one since February. I thought very hard about this to where when I got out of Call Me By Your Name, it took me a good 2 days to realize that my love for this character, it was portrayed so well in Logan that listen, I'm going to be one of the few critics online that have it even in their top 5, because most of these lists I've seen so far are just like with Mark and Joel. They'll either be an honorable mention or they'll be in the lower half. Not many people put in the upper half. But here's why I put this at number 1 instead of Call Me By Your Name. Call Me By Your Name, I was already expecting it to be good. I didn't expect Logan to be good at all. You got to keep in mind, his previous one was The Wolverine, and that was okay at best. So how do you go from that to this masterwork and this wonderful character study of this angry person going throughout life, this old curmudgeony person, and it has such emotional depth to it, and such crisp, clean cinematography, a wonderful score, and 2 strong caliber performances from Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart. You can't look me in the eye and tell me that movie was just okay. Even if it's just in your honorable mentions, which I can't believe even Mark has it on there. I remember, earlier in the year, Mark had Logan up there in his top 10 for a very long time. So I know that it's got some caliber to it. But, yes, even when I did my review, I gave it an A+. But I still have, issues with villains and all that stuff. But that doesn't really matter to me because everything else was so well done. And it focuses on Logan in such just emotionally impactful way that even the side villains didn't really bother me that much. And it was such a great finale, a ballsy finale, by the way, for that character and the way it went. Ended in such brutality, just graphic violence, and end with this emotional sting. Like I told you up front, my emotional nostalgia does play into about 5% of this. Because, as Mark pointed out, Joel and I are just youngins that are getting into trouble every Saturday night. And I was 10 years old when the first X-Men came out. I liked it, but I saw the second one in theaters by myself when I was, 12 when that came out. And I've loved this franchise ever since. So, Hugh Jackman to me as Wolverine has always been an entertaining aspect, right? But I never thought of that character or an X-Men movie as Oscar caliber. But what James Mangold did was do just that. Not only did he capture the character correctly and made him brutal and just this pierce, bloody savage with claws coming out of his knuckles, for Christ's sake, and actually had blood come out, you other X-Men films. It just makes no sense. But he captured that aspect of the character. He captured, the profanity, just this rough, gruff type of person. It was such a transformation. I could not believe what I was watching. Also, you could actually hand this movie off to anyone, and they would probably love it. Because if you didn't tell them it was a superhero movie and just said it was some weirdo sci-fi western, they'd probably believe you. And it actually does play off as a sci-fi horror western, which is such a weird blend, but I think it works. On top of Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart giving Oscar caliber performances, X-23, Daphne Keane, what a great introduction to her, because I had never seen her before in my life. for most of the movie, she speaks Spanish. But towards the end, you definitely do feel this attachment towards her, and it's such a powerful performance, kind of ping-ponging off of Hugh Jackman there. As far as the other performances, they're serviceable. I'm not going to say like they're, out of this world or anything, but like I said, when you have those core three characters pretty much elevate this movie to that standard, like I told you, everything kind of below it, it doesn't bother me as much. It is a character study. It focuses on Logan. It's like just watching this last hurrah of like this old man do his thing. And, a lot of people have a problem with the whole farmhouse detour thing. I think that's important to kind of slow down and take a breather from this story and just get like a sense of camaraderie like one last time before he's about to bite the dust. I love this movie. Just like with Mark, I've seen it 3 times. I get emotional every single time I watch it, even though I know what's coming. It's just a gorgeous movie about a brutal character, and I don't know what to say. It's just one of those things that, as a comic book fan, struck me in a way to where I liked Deadpool, but it's not like a great movie, but it did change the game. But I can tell you this, for Logan, it definitely changed the game. Bringing these movies up back to like that Dark Knight level where it's like, yeah, these movies can be Oscar caliber. And I appreciate Deadpool for being successful, because we would have never gotten this if it wasn't successful. So thank you, Ryan Reynolds, for saying the F-bomb and saying a bunch of dick jokes, because we got an R-rated Logan and it paid off. So I know it shocks everyone that this is on here. I got 3 Fox movies on my list, which is pretty cool. I got 2 blockbusters and an indie. But I just think, as a superhero fan, a comic book fan, a movie fan, a person that just loves rich stories with rich characters, especially with characters we've known for almost 2 decades now, the fact that you can elevate them to this point, you can't beat it. And I think it has just a great closure for both Professor X and Wolverine himself. So, Mark, you're silent over there. I'm assuming you're dead from just a lack of fanboyism, and you're probably like just rolling your eyes right now.
No, I'm glad. I mean, if you're going to pick a comic book movie,
yeah, pick that one.
That's the one to pick. I mean,
yeah.
this year for sure. I mean, no, you're right. It takes these characters seriously. Finally, like the biggest problem for me with Wolverine was you couldn't kill him.
Exactly.
You couldn't. And this one, he's like, you said claws coming out of his knuckles. They don't come out that easily now.
No, they don't. It's like he's Viagra for his claws. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's got to pull one of the claws out of his knuckle, and it's like, oh man, just changing that element of the character shifts the entire dynamic and your entire ability to sympathize with him. Because if he feels like he's immortal, like where are the stakes in this story? But right from the start, you're like, yeah, this guy is very mortal.
Well, it's like that ending battle alone. Like there was so much like anxiety, because I was like, I don't think he's gonna make it. Even with this like serum that he takes, it's like he's going to get weak at some point, and he's getting like bombastic like from all different angles, and you're like, dude, he's not going to make it. And like that's what's cool about like seeing this character get older, is that like you're right, he's not invincible anymore. Like he's going to eventually come to his end, and like you feel that anxiety throughout the entire movie, and it's cool. It's like this giant long chase scene with him and Professor X and this little girl, and you're kind of just riveted throughout the entire thing, even though it plays more like a Western and a drama almost.
Yeah.
And it's really like, this is in the next 10 that I mentioned earlier. It's definitely special, and, it's a really poetic sense of discovery, or journey of discovery, I should say, because these characters are discovering things about themselves along the way, and their histories and their what they share, and you just don't expect that from a movie about the Wolverine, where the last one was about how he was fighting the big Japanese samurai robot.
Yeah, what was
the
that?
Stupidest thing in the world.
I have no idea what
I hated both of the other Wolverine standalone movies, and with the X-Men Origins one where he's got CGI claws, and up until now it was lame, and now they're taking the character seriously. as has been said here now 3 times. And it's
and once again with like Call Me by Your Name, it's like it also has like one of the best final shots of any movie this year. Like I was actually surprised that they went that ballsy with the ending for it.
Yeah, it's a great ending. So those are our top 10s. My number 1 is Lady Bird, and that's the only correct one. I'm just kidding. Chase's. Oh yeah, so I guess I'll just give it over to Chase to recap.
All right, so just to recap real quick, because I'm sure Mark once again is rolling his eyes about how long we went. All right, so to do Mark's list from 10 to 1, he has Mudbound, Lady Bird, Girl with All the Gifts, Graduation, Dunkirk, Detroit, A Quiet Passion, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, A Ghost Story, and The Florida Project. Joel has Lady Bird at 10. That's weird. No, he has his Trophy at 10, Dunkirk at 9. What the hell did I write down?
Lost City of Z.
Lost City of Z. I have a terrible expo marker, by the way. Coco, Florida Project, A Ghost Story, War for the Planet of the Apes, The Shape of Water, Call Me by Your Name, and Lady Bird. For myself, it is Your Name, Lady Bird, I, Tonya, Coco, Brigsby Bear, War for the Planet of the Apes, The Disaster Artist, 3 Billboards, Call Me by Your Name, and Logan. So those are our top 10 films of the year. So what about you guys? I don't care what any of us have to say except for Mark, because he is the professional here. Joel and I are just terrible people. So please let us know down below what are your favorite top 10 movies. Make Joel even more angry and throw all the movies he hates in there.
And if you do, I will send angry letters to all of you.
Okay,
just
well,
an FYI.
Joel, you are banned for 2 weeks. Go to timeout. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this thing up because I'm sure we all need to get on with our lives. But Mark, I just want to thank you for coming on, and hopefully we can have you back at some point for an important episode. We're not going to just drag you to review the Emoji Movie, so we're going to really think about when we're going to bring you back. But yes, thank you for coming on. And where can the lovely people online find you and follow you?
You can find me at markreviewsmovies.com. You can find all my reviews there. And on Twitter, I'm at markreviews. Yeah.
All right.
I'm on Letterboxd too. Mark Dujsik.
Yeah, if you just type in Mark's name, and we'll have all of his info in the description below, you'll find him everywhere. Like the guy just plagues the internet like good old Joseph over here. So Joel, speaking of you, where can people find your footprint?
I'm at Twitter at Real Joel Copling. That's REEL. And then I'm on Letterboxd as well, J Copling. Everybody needs to be in Letterboxd, including you, Chase. And you can find my writing on joelonfilm.com, on dallasmoviescreenings.com. I review occasionally as well. A lot, really. I've reviewed probably 20-something movies this year for them. So, that's pretty much it. That's my internet footprint.
And to comment on the whole Letterboxd thing, I did start that up. So go follow me, and I will start in 2018 and record all of them from January till December. So Twitter, you guys can find me at Real Chase Lee. Subscribe to my YouTube channel to get other reviews that we don't do. And of course, with this show, like, favorite, subscribe, whatever you have to do, spread this around and let people know this is the definitive movie podcast. And hey, you got 3 top 10 lists. And we got one from a professional. This is what he does. So, please take his word on his movies, and Joel and myself. And, it's a nice group of movies. But, yeah, hopefully Mark can come back. But, yeah, all the links will be in the description below for all of our social medias. So, peace out, everyone. I'm going to play the outro song. This has been a lovely episode, Joel. So, yeah, you want to go ahead and do it out since we're going to in the same what?
We also have to announce what we're doing next week.
Oh, God.
We're counting down our top 10 most anticipated films of 2018, so that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so get ready for that. That will be episode 212, but we got to wrap this one up first, so let's do that right now. And, hey, listen, guys, if you made it through this entire, movie-long podcast, it's almost equivalent to 2 Michael Bay films, and you're not a movie fan, well, hopefully we convince you to be one. Peace out, everyone. That's Mark over there. That's Joel. I'm Chase. See ya next week.